jump in the chat, ask any questions you have. I wanted to jump on today because I got a new thing today, and I wanted to, there's been all this chatter and talk about it and people speculating, and I think it's this and I think it's this and I hope it has this and I don't like that it doesn't have that. So I just wanted to mess around with it and see what it actually does do and what it doesn't do, and how it can be a thing for you or not. Like, I have no idea. We'll see. It's kind of fun when you've got something new and you just kind of get to play around with it. So yeah, so let's switch this over here. Put in the corner view. There we go. So yeah, welcome to the evening stream. Cheers, little glass of wine, little new little piece of kit. So yeah, let's mess with the Ableton Move. So let's talk about it first, and then we'll jump in, and then if you've got questions, jump in the chat, ask whatever questions you have, put whatever you want in there. So I'm gonna move power supply over here. Yeah, ask any questions that you have about the Move or anything else. I mean, honestly, we can talk about whatever you want. It's a Thursday night, you know? But yeah, so if you have questions about the Move, and I'll give you my thoughts, which as always are my thoughts. It's like what I think about it. This may be the perfect piece of gear for you. It may be a horrible piece of gear for you. Who knows? But I'll let you know what I think as far as for me, and if and how I might use this this new thing, and yeah, what it is, what's it supposed to be, and what's it for. So yeah, so first and foremost, like before we get started, I hate that I have to do a stupid disclaimer like this, but I have nothing to do with Ableton. I wish I did. I wish they would sponsor me and send me free stuff all the time. It would be awesome. I've been a user of theirs since I think Ableton 5. I've had the Push, I have the Push 3. And as soon as I saw that this came out, I was really intrigued right away. So I put my order in right away, and got it today. It showed up. The box is still sitting right over there. I just kind of tore it out of the box and chucked it down, and wanted to jump right into it and see what it was. A couple of first impressions really quick before we jump into this. Now that you know that this is mine, that I bought it, it's not, you know, an Ableton freebie. This is not sponsored. This isn't an ad. This is just me messing around with a piece of kit that I wanted to mess around with, which is generally what this channel is anyway. But figured I should say that in this day and age. Everybody thinks you're shilling for somebody if you've got a piece of gear on your channel. So anyway, I got this because I was really intrigued. I wanted to see, you can tell on the surface, you know, just by looking at the specs and seeing their launch stuff, that it does have some limitations. And I wanted to see how prevalent those were, if they were important, if there was ways to work around them, or if it was uncomfortable or whatever. I also wanted to see what it did well. It's got some really interesting things that it does that I haven't seen on other devices, or certainly not on another Ableton device. And so I was curious about that. It has some really cool, powerful features that I would not expect in something that's kind of like, that's, you know, the smaller, newer product. It's not their giant flagship thing. It has a couple things that it does that the Push 3 doesn't even do. So yeah, it's you know, interesting as far as that goes. I will say, as far as the first impressions for the construction itself, it feels like a tank, which I was a little nervous when I saw the pictures. I thought it was going to be really light and plasticky. I was thinking kind of like the Roland Ira boxes, or like a circuit, like circuit tracks or something like that. And this feels way more substantial. It's heavier. It sits on the table. It doesn't really like move around. You really have to move it hard. So it's not a lightweight thing, but it is pretty lightweight just because of the size. But I would say that it feels more dense than it looks. But really well built. I mean, it's kind of like if you've messed around with the Push 3 at all, it feels very much like the Push 3 as far as like the build quality goes. It's slightly lighter, When I say lighter, I don't mean like lighter weight. I mean like lighter duty than the Push 3. Like for example, the jog wheel feels um, a bit like thinner plastic than the one that's on the Push 3. But like the encoders, they feel like the same, just a little bit smaller. The pads feel like just the same as the Push 2 pads, which I don't know if they are exactly the same, but they do feel like that. All of the buttons that are on it feel really good as well. They're all kind of flush with the surface, but they click in down below the surface, which is pretty cool. And yeah, they did a few other things on it, which I think are really clever and interesting as far as the design goes. So obviously it's got a really small screen, but they use the real estate of the screen really well, and you don't actually need it as much as I thought you would. I mean, I have about maybe an hour's worth of time spent on this because I wanted to at least find my way around before I got on this video with you guys. But I don't find myself wishing the screen was bigger, which I thought I was going to, because it seems really small when you first look at it. But it just doesn't feel that way when you're using it. As an example, all of the encoders are touch encoders, just like they are on the Push 3. So if you touch something, the screen changes to whatever that thing is. So as quickly as you're moving around stuff, the screen is changing already. So it's not like you have to go into a menu and do something, which I like that they kind of eliminated that step of, okay, go to menu A and then you can use the encoders, go to the second menu, then you can use the encoders. It's like, okay, I touch this, that's decay. So then I know I can do the decay. I touch this, that's attack. Okay, so I know that's attack. So I really like how they integrated the touch encoders with the small screen to give you a lot of feedback. If you've watched any of these streams, or if you've watched any of my videos, or if you've taken my course or anything, one thing that you'll know is that I'm big about workflow. And it's one of the reasons why I use the Electron boxes so much, because I really click really well with their workflow. And one of the things I like there is that you have a screen with 8 parameters and then there's 8 encoders next to it. And so it makes sense. And they didn't go that route with this, meaning that, you know, like with the Push 3 where there's a little screen below the encoders, or with this where there's a line of things and it says what it is. They actually made it so that as you touch an encoder, the entire screen becomes the feedback for that encoder. So it's clever, and it's really interesting and really useful. Like I find it, you know, it works really, really well. The other thing that's that I like as well too, so there's a step sequencer down here, which we'll talk about in a little while, which if you know me, you know I'm a sequencer freak, so I love the idea that there's a step sequencer in this. But not only is there a step sequencer, as with a lot of these smaller machines with kind of limited buttons and knobs for inputs, there's usually like a shift combo with things. And what they generally will do is they'll paint it onto the thing what the combo is. And so if you're in a dark room, which I often am, whether it's in my studio or whether I'm performing a show or whatever, it's kind of hard to read those. So you have to memorize what they are, and it can get really frustrating. What's interesting with this is when you press the shift, underneath here, it actually looks completely flat, and from every angle, it looks completely flat like the surface. But when you touch the shift button, all of a sudden these icons appear kind of through the panel. And you can't see them when you're not pressing this. Like, it's not like there's a dark piece of glass there. They're actually underneath the panel. And so the panel just looks normal before you touch that. So now when you hold this down, you have each one of these things. So if you want to go to like the settings, you know, you go here. And then when you take off shift, the settings one stays lit. So you know you're on that, and then you can just take it off. So again, I think they came up with some really clever workflow things that I've noticed just in the short time that I've been messing with it. Super easy to find my way around, which you know, we'll get into, you know, it's a simple device, whether or not it's a beginner device versus a pro device, and whatever that means. But I will say, no matter what, it is very easy to get around, and I think they did some really clever things with workflow. I see in the chat somebody asked, is this Ableton answers to Novation Circuit or OP1? My answer to that is yes. I think it's both. I think it's in the middle of the two. I think it feels more more fully functional and a little bit more fleshed out in some ways than the circuit. But the circuit does some things that this doesn't do, and we'll talk about that in a little while, like what this is really meant for and what it's kind of spec'd out to do. And then as far as an OP1 goes, I mean, as I used the OP1, I wasn't a huge fan of it. And I have to say, I like the feel and the workflow of this even better than the OP1. That is a much more full-featured device than this. It's a much deeper device than this. It has a bigger screen, a better screen, it's color, has all those things. I never liked the keys on the OP1. I really like the pads and the buttons on this. This feels very, very finished, if that means anything, kind of refined. So it feels like they did a great job on the design aspect of this to make it actually feel good to work on. And that's something that's really important for me. I mean, I feel like, if you're just looking for efficiency and spec and power, just use a computer. Like, there's nothing that hardware or things like that do better from a spec standpoint than a computer. However, if you want that kind of tactile feeling way of interacting with gear and making music in a way that has more feel, then that's why we all kind of love our hardware. We love the knobs and buttons and stuff like that. So for me, the feel of something is really important, and whether or not it is kind of inspirational to play because of how it feels to interact with it. And this has that. And I have to say, this has that more than the Circuit Tracks, which I used for quite a while, the Circuit Rhythm as well, and also the OP1. Like, I really enjoy this work feel better. Now, that said, this is very limited compared to an OP1. I mean, there's a lot of things that this does not do. However, if you're looking for something specific for what this is actually really good at, it might be a cool thing for you. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. So if there's anything that you want me to go into about this, if I've already figured it out, I'm happy to answer whatever questions in the chat. If not, I've got the manual here. I've also got the manual downloaded on my phone, so I can take a look and see and kind of find my way through stuff and kind of work through things. But I guess first things first, what does it not have? Biggest drawbacks for me is, well, actually, before we start with this, I'm just gonna give an overall impression of what I feel like from kind of first play around with this, what I feel like it's supposed to be for, and what it's not supposed to be for. This is, as they've mentioned in a bunch of their marketing, it is a sketchpad. It is an idea starter, specifically designed to interface with Ableton. So if you are an Ableton user, as I am, then often you'll look for ways to start your ideas. Like, maybe you're doing it on an OP1, maybe you're doing it on an app on your phone like Ableton Note, or Koala if you're a sampler person, or whatever. So you'll have a different way to start ideas if you're not sitting in front of a computer at home, which often we're not. We're traveling for work, or we're on a train, or we're stuck in the waiting room at an appointment or whatever. And we music nerds like to do stuff, kind of fidget with things and say like, oh, what can I do? Okay, I want to make a beat. What can I do right now? So often those things that we make in those places get lost because there's not a way to easily bring them over. And I've talked about that a bunch in my videos before, in my streams before, that it was one of the things that drew me initially to the Deluge, was that I could sketch on that, and then it was really easy to connect it to the gear once I got back to my studio. So I could connect it to hardware, and the hardware was connected to Ableton, and so I could run things in, and I could flesh out an idea that I had come up with on the Deluge. I've had the same thing. I traveled a lot for work, and I used for quite a while the Digitact, where I would sketch on that. I would come up with ideas, and then when I would get back, it was really easy to connect that again to other hardware, connect it via Overbridge, and be able to kind of get things into Ableton. Recently, what I've been using is the Oxy One sequencer, because I can use synths that are on my phone, just like synth apps, and with the Bluetooth MIDI, and just plug in my AirPods, and I can be on a plane, and I can come up with ideas. And then when I get back to my studio, I can either connect the Oxy One to Ableton, or I can connect it to my my live rig, my modular, anything like that, so that I can get those ideas out there. So that's what I've been using. Now, what this is for is that same kind of idea. So travel with it, take it on the train, take it with you when you go camping or whatever. And so you've got something that's battery powered, that you can sketch out ideas, that has quite a lot of functionality as it relates to bringing ideas specifically into Ableton. So if you're a Logic user, if you're, Cubase or something like that, this isn't going to be the thing for you. Like, as far as an idea starter, you may like it just as a thing to play around with. But if you are an Ableton user, it's really cool how they've done the integration. So you can, if you start an idea on here, you can bring it in via Ableton Cloud or via USB to your computer. Open it up directly in Ableton. It shows up in Ableton like a regular Ableton live set, and then you can kind of take it from there. You can flush it out. The synths that this has are the same synths that you have in Ableton. So this has drift and wavetable. So you can, if you do something in here on one of those, when you open it up in Ableton, you open up the full version of drift and the full version of wavetable, depending on what you were using. And so you can kind of take it on from there and grow the idea and kind of keep it going. Same thing with effects. If you're using a reverb in here and you open it up there, it's the Ableton reverb. If you're using a delay, it's the Ableton delay. So it's everything that works in here goes into Ableton and works there. The same is not true the other way around. This is not designed as a thing where, like the Push 3, where you can design something in Ableton and then move it over to the portable device and then take it with you on the go. It's not made for that. That's what the Push 3 is for, really. This is made to go the other direction. So this is made to sketch out ideas, come up with things, write things out, and then being able to move those over into Ableton and flesh out those ideas. Now, because of that, there's a lot of connectivity that this does not have. This does not have CV or gate out. This does not have TRS or DIN MIDI in or out. You can connect MIDI devices via USB. So it has a USB host port so that you can play a keyboard with it, or like I was messing around with the Oxy One, having it connected in here and sequencing things in the Oxy One and having them play the synths that are in here, which you can do. You can go the other direction, so you can sequence things in here and have it go out to a class compliant USB MIDI synth. So if you want to have that go out to something, you can do that as well. So it does work in a limited way, but it's not made to connect to other gear. It's not made to be the centerpiece of your DAW-less hardware live setup. It's just not made for that. It's not made to be a really an integrated live performance device. However, and I'll show you this in a little bit, it is possible for it to be a live performance device on its own, but not really as an integrated device with other gear, unless you're using Ableton. And then you can set this in a controller mode and you can control Ableton from this, and you get a ton of power out of this controlling Ableton. So you can control your live set, you can launch clips, you can do all kinds of things from this. So if that's what you were using your Push for, and the Push was just too big and you wanted something smaller, and maybe you're doing live sets on the road that are based around Ableton, and all you were doing from the Push really was doing some parameters within, effects racks or drum racks or whatever, and launching clips. Well, if that's the case, you can do all that from here. And so it'll be just a smaller controller that you can take with you. Now, the standalone part of it, like I said, is really designed for starting and sketching ideas. So that said, that's where a lot of the limitations come in. So it doesn't have the MIDI in and out to be able to be connected to other things. It has USB-C out, which you can connect to your computer. It also has internal Wi-Fi, so you can exchange whatever you've done in here with your computer that you have Ableton in, either over Wi-Fi or over USB-C. So that works really well. And then, like I said, you have the USB MIDI host. And then you've got a 3.5 millimeter TRS in and out. So the out can be headphones. Right now, the out is going out to my sound card so that you can hear it on this. And if you have the input, you can run things through this. So if you're using this via USB, via the USB host to control a synth, you can then have that synth come back into here, and this acts as a sound card, and then it goes back out, and everything can go out together. So a lot of interesting stuff that it does from those things, but also a lot of limitations. Now, the software itself that it's running is it's basically Ableton Note. If you've ever used Ableton Note in your phone, what this is it's a hardware version of Ableton Note that's expanded a bit, which is, it's funny because when Ableton Note first came out, I got it, and as soon as I kind of loaded it up and started messing around with it, I said, this is a cool idea, but I can't functionally use it. Like it's really super clunky, the interface on a phone, and things are really small and all that stuff. So this solves a lot of that for me. The same thing that I wanted to use Note for in my phone, being able to use Note that way in here, I think is very cool. So yeah, so that's kind of the overview of what it's supposed to be for and what it's not. So now, if you have any questions, again, chuck those in the chat. I'm happy to go over things and show you whatever's on here. Otherwise, I'll just kind of walk through stuff. But I do want to show you, like I said, I have about an hour's worth of time on this, just kind of finding my way around. And it's shocking how easy it is. I've only had to refer to the manual a couple times. Everything is very kind of logical where you would think it would be. Like you have an undo and you're like, well, I wonder what would redo be? Probably shift and undo. And it is, so like little things like that are really easy. You have a mute button, and then you can like mute individual tracks. You can mute whole tracks, which we'll talk about what the tracks are like in just a second. There's a lot of people talking about that. So yeah, it's what I've noticed is that it's really intuitive to use. It sounds great. I will mention that as well. I was pleasantly surprised at how good it sounds. So just to show you a little bit of how it sounds. So this is something that I just kind of knocked together really quick because I was messing around with the drum racks. So it has a 909 kit in it, and then I was messing around with changing out some of the sounds to use for other things. So let's see how this sounds. Let me know if you hear this and how it sounds. Let me know if you're hearing that. Just pop up in the chat whether or not you can hear this and how it sounds. So again, 909 kit, kind of the basics, and you've got individual tracks, then you can mute those. You want to mute your kick, you want to mute your hats, and then you want to bring those back in. So again, simple to use in a way like that. One thing that you'll notice on here is that there's some drum stuff, there's some low tom stuff, there's some percussion stuff, there's a kind of a high, kind of a lead soundy thing in there. Oh, and I didn't have, there's another kind of percussion part that I had muted here so you can hear that. So again, and you hear that, that's a longer loop so you can hear it kind of trail out afterwards. So one of the first things that I saw is in a lot of the feedback and a lot of the kind of hot take videos that came out the day that this came out, it kind of cracked me up because it reminded me of the Oxy One. So if you guys see the Oxy One, and by the way, here's the size, just so you can see the two of them together. It's a little bit smaller than the Oxy One, like maybe, I don't know, 3 centimeters shorter and slightly taller than the Oxy One. But one of the things that a lot of people mention when they first see the Oxy One is they say, oh, it's only a 4-track sequencer. And I always have to explain to people that each one of those tracks can be multiple tracks. So you can have a multi-sequencer on track 1 and have it be an 8-track sequencer. So you actually have 32 tracks of sequencing within the Oxy One. Exactly the same case with the Ableton Move. So everybody said, oh, it's only 4 tracks. Well, the reality is each one of these tracks can be a drum rack, which this is a really different drum rack. It's a newly expanded drum rack, which is in Ableton 12, and now it's in this as well. And you could actually put whatever synth or drum rack you want on all 4 of these tracks. So on track 1 right now, it has a drum rack which has 16 slots for samples to go into that. Each one of those can be sequenced separately, and each one of those can be sequenced melodically. So everything that you just heard, all of this is just on track 1. I don't have anything on track 2, 3, or 4 right now. And I'm only using like not even half of the slots in track 1. So basically you have 4 times 16, so you have 64 tracks instead of 4 tracks. So it's very different from how it appears. Now, all of those tracks aren't the same, and very much like in the the circuit where you can change them out, like in the Digitact or the Syntact where they can be MIDI tracks or audio tracks, these can be swapped out as well. So you can have 64 tracks of sounds that are samples. You can't have 64 synth voices. So a sequencer, one of the 4 sequencers, can either be a drum rack that has 16 sample slots and 16, sequenceable lanes, or it can be a synth by itself and be a single synth. So you could basically have one track be all your drums, another track be a whole bunch of samples, like 16 different samples, and then still have 2 different synths. You could have a wavetable and a drift, so that you can be doing other things with those. So again, it gives you up to 64 tracks and not just 4. So I get asked, I already even saw it in the the stream, is there a way to expand the number of tracks? Yes, there is. You just load a drum rack and then you have 16 tracks on that one sequencer. Now, within that sequencer, they've done a couple of really interesting things with the drum stuff, or with the drum rack. So I put on this pad right here, kind of a stab, like a stab sound. So these 16 pads on this side are always your drum rack, and these 16 pads over here are your pads for playing, just like you would have if you were in the keyboard mode on a push. And then across the bottom you have your sequencer. So if you've selected this track, so you can either select it by hitting the track like that, but that makes it sound, or you can just hold shift while you select and it doesn't make it sound. So then you're on this track. So this now, all of this over here becomes they call it 16 notes, 16 tones. I can't remember what it's called, this mode. And it basically gives you 16 notes that you can play. So you can play. And then you can also go up and down. Multiple octaves. So again, you can play this right now. It's in a key mode. So again, shift, and you've got this little note down here. The icons are pretty self-explanatory. So if you hit this one, it decides, do you want to be in key or chromatic? So right now I have it in key, but if I just click on that, it goes to chromatic. So now you see you have the key. If you know me, this will make you laugh that it's in E Phrygian already. So the lit up ones are that key. So you got, and then the not lit up ones are the chromatic notes that are in between. So they don't fit within that, but they allow you to play them. So if you want to play notes between the notes of your scale, you can do that, or you can just click on this again, and then you're in key again, and then you can't hit a wrong note. Then you're back to having it be within your scale. So if you want to record things in, obviously you can just hit record and you can start to play, which is the simple way to do it, or you can sequence things. So for example, if I wanted to sequence on that particular sound that we were talking about here, I can just put steps into the step sequencer, and then I can, here, I'm gonna mute a bunch of these other things right now so that you don't have to hear all of it. So those are the individual steps that I put in. Now you can't do the kind of electron style where you hold this down and then you do things to it. Although I haven't tried it with it in record mode. Oh yeah, you can. Never mind. I lied. I didn't think you could do that. So what I was doing before is if you hit a note and then you touch the spot on the sequencer, it puts that note on the sequencer so you can kind of select the notes as you want them. But as I just noticed, which I had no idea, you can, once those are in, so let's just put some random ones in on the root note. So those will all be on the root note. So if it's on play mode, you can't overwrite that note, but if it's on record mode and you hold one down and then you touch the note. So interestingly enough, you can do that. So anyway, I like it that you have a step sequencer, which is not a thing that Ableton normally does, which is kind of cool. I'm a step sequencer nerd, so it's fun that way. It is a very, very basic step sequencer. So it is not, you know, electron style parameter locking and doing all that stuff. You can't do any of that stuff per step. I mean, there's a way to do it, and I'll explain how they explained it in their manual, but it is not at all the way Electron is, where you hold a step and then you can put locks on that trigger. This has ways to record things, but also record in automation, which I'll show you in just a sec, which is very cool as well. But it's designed to be a much more simple sequencer, so you can play things in. And then if you like that, you can hit capture, just like you can in Ableton. So if you're familiar with Ableton and the capture function, you don't have to be recording in order to be saving your kind of jam that you're doing. And if you do something that you really like, you can hit capture and it will remember that thing that you played, even though you're not, you don't have record on. So this has capture built in, which is very, very, very cool for a device that is designed to, it's a device that's designed to sketch out ideas. So the fact that they added in things like capture, which are very conducive to sketching out ideas, is it's thoughtful. I think it's, you know, there are things that they left out, but there are certain things like that they put in, which kind of shows the purpose of the device and kind of what they're leaning towards. So that's cool. The other thing that you can do too is if you're playing along, and so let's say we've got this sequence that we're playing right here, and while we're playing along, we decided we want to mess around with like, and we wanted to mess out with the transpose. Well, we can capture that too. So the capture also works for automation, which I mentioned before. There's things that this does that the Push 3 doesn't do. That's one of those things. Capture doesn't work for automation yet. I'm sure it will if it does it in here. I'm sure they'll set it up for there. But capture doesn't work for automation in the Push 3, and it does here. And if you've saved an automation, the light underneath that parameter shows up red. I don't know if you can you see that? Yeah. So this light's red and the other ones are white. So it shows that you did something there. And if you don't want to do it, you can just hold down the delete and touch the knob, and then that deletes the automation that you put in. So again, super intuitive workflow. It was shocking to me how easy it was to just be like, oh yeah, cool, that's probably what that means, and it was exactly what it meant. So very, very interesting the way that all works out. So again, everything you're hearing is all just on one of the 4 sequencers, because that one can be 16 samples. Now, if you want to use synths, I've got synths on the other ones. And one of the things that's interesting is, so they've got these presets that you can load in, and it doesn't tell you which synth it is because you don't really need to know. It just kind of gives you a preset, and then they've selected 8 macros for that preset that give you some fun stuff to play around with it. So it's not designed to be a deep sound design, dive into the synth engine and create a whole bunch of cool sounds. It's designed to sketch out ideas and then move those into Ableton and blow those up into whole ideas or tracks or loops or whatever you want to do with those. So again, if you move into the synth side, I've got that muted. And then it's very easy to kind of select your presets. And as you're going through the presets, you can play them, which is really cool. They're broken up into a lot of different categories. So you've got, let's see here, you have drums, bass, brass, evolving, guitar and plucks, mallets, pads, piano and keys, rhythmic, special effects, strings, synth keys, synth lead, synth pluck, voice, winds, templates, and user presets. User presets means if you load in a preset and then you change parameters on it into a new sound that you like, although you're not going to be doing super deep sound design, if you come up with a new sound that you like, you can save that into your user presets, and it saves it as the name of whatever the original preset was with a number after it. So if you do like 10 different versions of, the pluck preset, it'll be like pluck 1, pluck 2, pluck 3. And then if you go into the software that you can connect this to in your computer, you can rename things and reorganize them in there if you want to. But this just gives you a kind of a quick way to save it, so you don't have to worry about going in and naming things all the time. It'll just name it as whatever it was with a number. So it'll give you a reference to go back to. So it was something based off of this particular sound, and then and then you modified that. So yeah, again, synth engines and sample, drum racks. They call them drum racks, but it's an odd name in here because they're not just drums. It's basically a sample rack that you can use for samples because of the melodic side of it and things like that. So we can go deeper into those if you want as well. So let's look at the chat. Looks like there's a few questions in here. So let's do this round. Hey James, what's going on? Neon Void, Happy Camper, Push 3 here. Yes, as am I. I have my Push 3 right over there. Good evening. Sound is good. Awesome. Can you automate the muting? I don't think I get what you mean, but I don't think so. Again, this isn't designed as a performance device, so it's not something that you would be that you would be doing with that. You can automate the parameters that are given to you, the macros that are given to you here, and and that's pretty much it. Also parameters of effects as well. But so parameters of sound sources and parameters of effects, you can automate and save. Unexpected size. Yeah, it was, it's kind of funny. It's, in one sense, it's smaller than I thought it would be. And then, but it doesn't feel small as far as like working on it. They did a really good job of how they spread out the buttons, the size of the buttons that they chose, to make it, it's a really comfortable workspace, but it is small. It's significantly narrower than the Push 3, also narrower than the Oxy, which means it's also narrower than like an Octatrack. It's gonna be, here, let me just unplug all this over here so that I can show you what it looks like with a Digitact. So that's a Digitact next to it. So they're, I'll slide it down so you can see both. There you go. So you can see the size, slightly wider, significantly shorter, and way thinner. That's the other thing, is if you look and see how crazy thin this thing is, compared to, like, the Digitact is literally twice as thick as this is. So size-wise, very small. Weight-wise, it weighs less than the Digitact, but not by a lot. It's hefty. Like it's got some meat to it. So yeah, interesting. Let's see. Learning how versatile each track is. Hovering over the buy button. Well, just so you know, this isn't to make you buy this. On the contrary, this is to maybe help you decide not to if it's not for you, or go, oh yeah, that answers my question, so now I will get it. Like I'm not going to tell you should get this, because it's a specific device. So it is not going to be for everybody. This is not your all-in-one DAW in a box, groove box, brain for your whatever the trendy term is. This is specifically for sketching out ideas, coming up with ideas, and then moving them into Ableton. Now, for somebody like me, I will sketch out ideas in here and potentially sample them into the Octatrack or the Digitact, or sample them or put them into Ableton, flesh them out, and then load them into the Octatrack or Digitact. This is a way for me to write pieces and parts and loops and ideas that I can use in my live setup. So I'm seeing it that way. And so, yeah, again, not for everybody, but I feel like I have a use for it, but I may not. We'll see, or you may not, sorry. Let's see here. I've been waiting for this stream. Cool, you're welcome. Let's see. Not a tracker, still a DAW. Workflow, that is. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like a DAW. It feels like a groove box. It doesn't feel like Ableton. Like if you've never used Ableton before, you would be just as comfortable on this as somebody who's used Ableton a lot. Like there's not a lot of like insider Ableton knowledge that you have to have in order to do this, because it's not really Ableton. It's Ableton Note that it's running. So it's a light version that's kind of an app version of something that Ableton came up with as a sketchpad that really doesn't have a lot to do with Ableton. But what this does have is, under the hood, it has those sound engines and effects engines that you can then use, and the drum racks that you can then use in Ableton. So like if you didn't have Ableton and you just wanted a groove box just to screw around with, this would be cool as well. Just not if you wanted to use this as an integrated part of a live setup. It's just not that. So let's see. I'm Ableton since Live 4 after 20 years. I get this. Yeah, you've got me beat by a little. I'm Ableton since Live 5. That's when I started. But yeah, again, like I just mentioned, if you're into Ableton and you're already an Ableton user and you want something to sketch to start ideas, this is super fun. Like I've been having a blast on this. If you're not an Ableton user, this would still be super fun, but it would only have kind of limited use for you. You'd be able to do stuff in here, and then that was kind of it. Maybe you could kind of, you can export the tracks that you make as WAV or MP3s if you want, but they're not going to be finished tracks. You're not going to be able to do a whole track and master it and do all that in here. It's just not a DAW. It's not that at all. But it is cool. It is fun. Let's see here. What does the quantization micro steps look like in sequencer mode? So you can record it, when you record in unquantized. So or you can set that up in the menu to be quantized. It's however you want. So you can record things in unquantized, which I know a lot of you will love, especially if you're like finger drummer types. And then if you go into, again, shift menus, I think this is quantized. Yeah, so then you can quantize after the fact by percentage, however you want to do that. So, yeah. So yeah, you have options to quantize, or you can record unquantized. You can also micro time things. So if you are in a step and you just use the left and right arrows, or left and right arrows, you can nudge. So it says here notes nudged, and it's a percentage, I believe. Yeah. So you can nudge notes around, individual notes, and I think you could nudge whole sequences. No, you can't. So yeah, so you can nudge individual notes within the step sequencer for sure. Let's see here. Random sound generating toy. Yes. Yes. I mean, it's hard because this will take us into a conversation that I wanted to have actually. The idea of something that's a pro piece of gear versus a beginner or an amateur or a toy, whatever. For me, I think that and again, this is me personally, I think in order for something for me to feel like it's a pro piece of gear, it needs to fit into your kind of pro style of workflow, whether that is live performance, whether that's production, whether that's writing, whether that's performing, singing along with the machine, whatever it is. If it's just to make beats for fun, for me that's a toy. This, I think, can be a toy for people who aren't doing that, in the same way that the OP1 can be a toy for people who are not actually writing music. This one is a quarter of the price of the OP1. So if you're looking for a toy, this is probably a cheaper toy. But also, if you want to use it as kind of a professional production tool, and if you are using Ableton, it will be much more of a pro tool. It's something that you can use to sketch out things that you can instantly load into Ableton, power it up, and there you go. You have your everything you did in here. You've got any clips you've done, any any variations you created, any of that stuff is all in there, and that just loads up into the session view of Ableton. So in that sense, it can be a very handy, easily integrated kind of pro style tool, or it can just be something you have tons of fun on and just kind of screw around on, which, I mean, I like the fact that it's both, because I don't always want to be feeling like I have to be putting out a product. But at the same time, I also don't want to just, like, if I come up with a great idea, I don't want it to die in the machine because I came up with this great idea and now it's just like a dead end. So I do like that it can be either, but that's me personally. It's, your workflow is going to be your workflow. Let's see. What else? Looks like fun little groovebox, like a circuit, but with stem export, I would get more use out of it. Yeah, so again, it's really, so the audio out is not kind of stem export. So you can't export out the individual stems. I don't think. It was kind of ambiguous in the manual, and I haven't powered up the computer software yet, so I'm not sure exactly how deep it goes. But I don't think that you can export out each individual track as a stem. However, just like with anything else, you can mute tracks and record them out one by one so you can get stems out, which is, one way to do it. Or the whole idea here is you wouldn't be you're not getting something that's a finished product out of this. So you wouldn't necessarily want the stems that would come out of this. They're not done yet. So what you would do then is you would connect this to Ableton, open up Ableton, and then you have everything tracked. And then you can just resample over to another audio track just next to it, and all of a sudden you have all your stems. So, and just with kind of one push and one run through, and you've got all your stems. So you can export stems, just not directly out of here, because it's not really designed for that. It's designed to go from here to Ableton, and then you do whatever you want with it, whether that is stemming things out, whether that's continuing on to develop a track, whether that's just recording and ripping it down, whether it's, you know, changing out the sound because you liked the idea that you sketched, but you didn't really love the sound, and changing that out and then recording it and using that loop in your live set or whatever. So yeah, it doesn't export stems directly, but it's very easy to stem with it because you can just open it up in Ableton and record in one shot. So interesting that way. Let's see. Used to walk around and make tunes with my iPad. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like that. I mean, so if you've used Ableton Note before, this is Ableton Note. So it's kind of the same thing, but it has a lot more power because it does have those synths in it that the Ableton Note doesn't have. Oh, that's something else I didn't mention. Now that we're talking about Ableton Note, that I should probably bring up is that I mentioned you can go from the Move into Ableton, but you can't go the other way. That is not the case with Ableton Note for iOS, or for, I'm pretty sure it's available on Android as well. With this, via USB, you can go both directions. Because the thing is that full-blown Ableton in your computer does a lot of things this doesn't do. So you couldn't do something there and then move it back over. Ableton Note does this does everything that Ableton Note does. So you can move your thing into Ableton Note, keep working on it in there, mess around with it, move it back into here, and you can kind of go back and forth between Ableton Note in either your iPhone, your iPad, or your Android phone or whatever. So in that case, it does go back and forth. But with regular full-blown Ableton, it does not go back and forth. But you know, I was like you know, I was messing around with things on my phone or on my iPad, and it was cool and all, but like even trying to do something on a pad, you didn't get the same, you know, it's not the same feel as if you're using a pad. And with here, it's the exact same software, but it feels like it's been completely reinvented, even though it's exactly the same software. And it's because you're using an interface that you can actually touch and feel, and you weren't in your phone because you've got a smooth screen. So it's really funny how different it feels. The same software between the phone and the hardware device. So yes, it is very much like that. Matching the Move with the Digitac 2 could be a killer combo, I think, and you have a super powerful live system. Interesting. Yes and no. There is no way to sync them. So again, this is not designed to integrate into a live setup. You can't sync this to other things clockwise. So there's not a way to clock this, at least that I've found, from other things, or to clock other things from this. You can send MIDI notes and sequence MIDI notes in a synth from this, and you can send, you know, notes from a MIDI keyboard into this, but neither of those things are clocked. Those are just gates and triggers and pitch CV. So you're just sending notes and information. You're not sending clock in any way. Now, you already have USB out, you already have an audio out, so you could technically do a MIDI clock sync over USB, and if there's a way with the TRS, I would assume, because that's how MIDI goes anyway, is through a TRS connector, so you may be able to do that via the audio port. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments if you're a tech person, but you should at minimum be able to do an audio clock signal out from this. So there may be a way to do that via firmware later on, but I can tell you right now, I have not found any way to sync this to any other piece of gear from a clock standpoint. So yeah, it would be cool if it did that, because that would open up a crazy amount of new worlds that this could do, but it doesn't do that now because I don't think it was designed for it. But yeah, we'll see. So let's see, new gear syndrome. Why not just start in Ableton? Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned before, if you want to make music and you want to have the least expensive, most versatile and best sounding music production gear, get a DAW and a computer. You have everything you could ever want. You have infinite decisions. You have all of that stuff. Now, that said, there's a reason why I'm surrounded by synths in this room right now. It's not because they're better than the synths in my DAW. It's because they're more fun to play. This, I can tell you, is way more fun to play than Ableton Note, and it is way more fun to play than full-blown Ableton. As far as like coming up with cool ideas and just kind of focusing on notes and patterns and music and changing sounds, this is way more fun, at least for me. So yes, if you just want power and bang for your buck, absolutely just get a computer. Don't waste your time on hardware. If you want fun and feel and vibe and inspiration, get hardware. Or even better, do both. Let's see. Where are we at here? Yeah, if this didn't have the Ableton name, the ratio of hate love would probably be different. Yeah, I think so too. But I have to tell you though, it's I watched a lot. I think I watched all of the initial takes because I wanted to see if there was anything that I was missing as I was waiting for this to arrive today. And I would say 95% of the hate that I saw, at least from YouTubers out there, are MPC guys. And they were all just like, oh yeah, the pads aren't MPC pads and it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this. Yeah, it's not supposed to. That's not what it's for. This is not an MPC. If you want an MPC, get an MPC. If you're a finger drummer, get an MPC. If you want to make sample-based hip hop, get an MPC. Like, nobody's arguing with that. This is not for that. This is if you want to write all sorts of other kinds of music in Ableton, not in the MPC universe. If you want to do it in Ableton, but you don't want to be tethered to a computer with a mouse and keyboard, sketch out ideas here, load them into your computer, and then blow them out into full-blown tracks. So yeah, it is an Ableton device. like no joke, there's no getting around it. It is an Ableton device. 100% it is an Ableton device. Let's see. Export stems to the machine and samplitude. Yeah, sure. And again, you know, Machine is a great piece of gear. The Machina Plus, I wish it didn't overheat. I wish it had more power, but it's an amazing interface. Crazy how they've been able to integrate, you know, VSTs into it and all kinds of other synths. Same with MPCs. Like, they're really great for what they are. This is not anything like that. But it is cool. It is fun, especially if you're already an Ableton user. Let's see. I wonder what the voice limits are per step. So you mean like, I think you're asking about polyphony. If I'm not wrong, I think I read somewhere that it is 8. I think it depends on the synth, for one thing. So the synth voices, I think they are 8 for the most part. I know a couple of them are monosynths, so it's just one voice, but I think for the most part, it's 8 voice polyphony for the synths. And then on the sample tracks, those sample tracks have, so each individual sample slot is monophonic, but you have 16 slots per sequencer and they can all play at the same time. So you have 16 notes of polyphony per step in a drum rack or style sequencer. And then the other ones kind of vary depending on the individual synth that you are using. Let's see, there's some confusion around whether or not you can actually import your own drift and wavetable presets. Also, do you know if you use earbuds with the mic? Can you sample via the earbud mic? So 2 things. The first one, importing presets from drift and wavetable, you cannot do yet, but I saw, if you watched the Sonic State, the interview that Nick Batt did with the guys from Ableton about this, they mentioned that there's a couple things that are in their roadmap coming up for new things. That's one of the first ones, is being able to import your own wavetables and your own presets for drift. And then another thing is importing the Ableton warp algorithm into this, which it does not have right now. There's ways that you can stretch, but it does distort the sound, so it's not really made for that. But if you think about it, once they get that warp engine in here, this could become a stem player if they come up with a way to sync it. There's some, again, I feel like this is the first iteration of this, and I feel like there's a lot of things that it will probably be able to do, but I don't like to talk too much about those because I'm not a big fan of buying a piece of gear and then feeling like they owe me something. I would much rather say, is this worth it today for what it is today? And if it is, great. And then if they send me extra things through an update, then even cooler. But it's not anything that I ever feel like I'm kind of owed by the company. Let's see here. Oh, hey Josh, thanks for the tip and the thumbs up. Appreciate that. Let's see here. Great stream. How'd you hit the sub button? Awesome. Cool. Love that. Love you subs. Thank you guys. I just went over 10,000 recently. That kind of blew my mind. But thank you guys very much for that. Appreciate it. 16 steps max, I believe. Is it? No, it is 256 steps. The sequencer in this. So 16 at a time, but then you can kind of page over. I can't remember. 16 bars. Yeah, so yeah, 16 bars. So yes, so I don't have to answer the rest of the question because it is already 256 steps, so you don't have to worry about chaining them together. Ableton should have made a dedicated keyboard with drum pads years ago. Yeah, I mean, I know they've had a deal with, is it Novation? I think it's Novation, where they've kind of worked on things together. They did stuff with Akai for a while. I know they've been working on things with Novation for a while. So I think that just kind of wasn't their wheelhouse because there's so many of those out there. You know, like any of the Novation, the whatever key steps and any of those things, or any of the Arturia or any of those, they all have Ableton integration, like kind of native. So you can just put it on the Ableton preset and everything works. So there wasn't really a need for Ableton to do that. This is very different because this is kind of creating a machine that makes music in the Ableton ecosystem that you can then carry over into Ableton. So I think this is a different thing. Save stems and get them from the browser. You can. Oh, cool. I have not seen that yet. I read something about that, but it was not clear to me the way it was written. So I'll have to mess around with that. I'll let you know if it's an easy thing to do or not. Ableton Link for devices that support it. Yes, that is true. So it does have a way to clock. You are correct, which is Ableton Link. None of my live setup hardware that I use is Ableton Link compatible. I don't think the Oxy one is, although I should check. I'm not sure. But I don't think any of it's Ableton Link compatible, so it is not syncable. If it is, then that's your way to sync them together and to be able to integrate it into a live setup. And now the other thing too is being able to use Ableton Link with Ableton itself and not have it be in controller mode. So you're not controlling Ableton, but you could link to that and then Ableton can MIDI sync to your other gear. So there are kind of workarounds if you really, 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 really want to have this in your live setup. But I'm not necessarily going that direction, particularly not with this stream, because that's not necessarily what I'm interested in with this. What I want to do with this is I want to create really interesting loops and patterns that I can then move into my samplers, that I can move into the Digitakt or move into the Octatrack and use in my live setup. But have this with me that I can kind of jam with stuff and then move them over there. Because like I said, it sounds great. The stuff within it sounds really good. Let's see. Let's see. I want one we'll absolutely purchase this year. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So far, I think it is very cool. It's not an MPC, but the sampling has been pretty good for me so far. Yeah, it's so it's got different ways to sample. It's got a mic built in, which I haven't tested out the quality of that yet. I'm assuming it's like any mic. Because it's class compliant USB, you can also sample in from things like your phone. So if you wanted to like sample something off of YouTube or whatever, you could pull that in from your phone and sample into it. You can sample in via, actually, no, you can't, because the class compliant is not audio. It's just MIDI. But you do have audio sync, so you can still, connect your phone via audio. You can also run synths into the audio input. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to sample into it. Then you can also resample, which is cool. You can resample the master. So if you come up with something that you like, you can mute tracks, resample the master, and then move that over to a sample slot in one of the drum rack sample slots, and then free up that synth again. So there are ways to kind of resample and move things over so that you can build out, tons and tons and tons of tracks if you want to. So let's see. Link to MIDI on iOS. Cool. I have not tried that. So we'll try it. Although I'm not using anything iOS in my live setup, but who knows? I'll figure out a way to do it. If it were that important, I would figure out a way to do it. I think the only way I would use this in my live setup right now is maybe just as an instrument to play that I wouldn't sync. So if I wanted to play something live, so like what we were messing around with before. So if you had so to be able to just play along with what I'm playing, that would be an option for sure. Cool. That's it for the questions right now. So if you've got other questions, go ahead and chuck those in there. In the meantime, I'll just walk through a few of the other kind of workflow bits. So if you go into the set overview, so you have 32 sets that you can put in. That what I was just working on was obviously my first set. So if you want to go into a new set, you just go like that, and then you go to track one. One thing that I love, it's really interesting that it does this, and again, it shows that it's designed to be a creative tool, is when you open up a new set, it automatically populates track one is a drum track with a kit, and it's different every time. It randomly selects a kit. Track two is always a bass, and it always selects one that's always different. Track three is always kind of like a pad or an atmosphere. And then track four is always some sort of a lead. So it just gives you a starting point with some interesting ideas that you can just jump right into. And if you want, it's easy enough to just change those up, but it's cool because it just randomly selects some stuff for you to get you started. And if you don't feel like using them, change them. But sometimes I've noticed already that it kind of throws out something that I wouldn't have necessarily picked. And I think it's kind of cool. So, so then if you go, for example, if you go back to your drum track, you can, I'm much more of a sequencer, like a step sequencer person than I am like a finger drummer or playing stuff in live. So what I would do is I would come to my kick track and I would just start to put in kick, right? So you just got to get that. As soon as you put steps, it starts. The other thing you can do is go in here and set your tempo. The tempo stays the same from track to track, which is kind of cool. So if you open up something new, and then you can just kind of go through and find what are the so let's say we wanted an offbeat hat. You can go in and individually adjust things by step. So if you want to change out note length, if you want to change out velocity, so like if you have a step here, you can just hold down that step and turn the velocity down with the volume knob. So again, when you're holding a step, that becomes velocity. When you're on like kind of your main thing, it becomes your master volume for your whole track. And if you hold it down on the track that you're working on, it becomes an individual track volume. Right? So you get all those different uses out of one button just by whatever you're touching with it. So again, super cool workflow ideas. And with each one of the parameters, or sorry, with each one of the sounds, you get 8 macros or 8 random parameters that you can choose. So first one is always transpose. Then you have the second one that just shows the sample is the start point. So if you were to, actually let's go to a different one so you can hear it a little better. Maybe mute some of these other ones. So if we're on our open hat or crash or whatever that one is, so first thing is transpose. Then you have start point. Then you have attack. Hold. Decay. And then you get a playback effect, which I was messing around with these a little while ago, and I'll show you this on more of a melodic sample in just a little bit, because it works better there. And that's what those last 4 parts are, or those last 4 parameters are, is the different playback effects. So they're pretty cool. So anyway, so you can go back into So again, you see how like really quick it is, and we're still only on track 1. So then let's say we wanted to change up, like I would never, I'm gonna mute all these ones. I would never use that sound for anything. It's not my style. So that's a great pad for me to go in and change up something else. So if we go into that and then we touch the wheel, it takes us to, you know, again, touch sensitive. So it takes us to that sound. If you click on the sound, it takes you to the vocal shot, which it is, and that's within the whole section of vocal shots. But if you just hit the back arrow, it takes you out to the subjects again, you know, the kind of groups of sounds. So if you go into notes, then you have like some bass sounds here. So let's say. So let's try a subby thing like that. So now we've got that one on here. We can shorten up the decay a little. And hold. So it gives us a little bit shorter bit of a sound there. So now you've got your 16 steps over here. So then you can go in if you want, and you can go in and just start to put in steps of this one. And then you can go back in and start to use your drums again. So if I mute out, actually, so this was the other sound that I just put in, this kind of plucky sound. So if I mute this out, now I can go into those parameters again. So obviously we've got the same ones as before, you know, attack, hold, decay, all of that stuff. But then we go into the pitch effects. So I have to read more about what these actually are, but it was interesting to see what they did. So for example, I put it onto this loop effect. Then you can do the loop offset and then the loop length. So then you can come up with kind of another cool sound that you like and then go back into the drum stuff that we were doing before. You can also go in, so we're still on that same channel with that kind of melodic thing that we're doing. So within that, you also have there's two effects per track. So this drum rack counts as a track. So if I was to add reverb to this, it's gonna add it to everything. So you can do it, you just wanna make sure. You have reverb, you also have other effects here that you can add. So like if you were to add, oh, that's still on the reverb one. So you have different types of saturator on the saturator one. But then you can also change up the effects and add, let's say you wanted to add a delay. Then if you do shift and this button while you're on a song, you get kind of like the main bank, which is what we're on. But then you can also go to the filter and setup. So that makes all these be the filter, which is per channel on this, which is pretty cool. So like if you were to change this to a high pass, add some resonance. One thing to note, again, just because I think it's important, because I heard this too much over the last 24 hours, everything we're doing right now is still on track 1. So when people are like, hey, it's only a 4-track sequencer, it's not. It can be 4 drum racks of up to 16 tracks per drum rack. If you don't mind using samples and you don't mind having a little bit less control over individual things, which again, as a sketchpad, you probably don't need that. You know, the way I have been setting this up pretty much so far is having 2 tracks of drum racks and then 2 synth tracks, and more than enough. So it's 32 tracks of samples plus 2 synths that I can go in and tweak and mess around with and do stuff with. So a lot of options within there. So again, lots you can do with it, and that's, again, just on the first track. So then if you were to go to the next track, so maybe you like that bass, maybe you don't. If you don't like it, go ahead and click on it, change it up. You want to do some acid? That 303 sound, that acid sound, has a sub gain on it, which is pretty cool. hit record, go ahead and put that in. If you don't like it, hit delete, you just touch the button, and then you can go back to it. And let's say you like that one, you can hit the capture, and it captures what you just did. So, and again, you can delete it really easy. So you guys get the idea. There's a lot you can do, mess around with it. You can get kind of lost in it. And I think that's the whole idea. For me, from what I've seen, I think that's the point. I think the point is have something that is super quick and immediate to be inspirational, to get a bunch of ideas out really quick, to jam with, to play around with, to explore, come up with new stuff. And then once you come up with some stuff like that and you're like, yeah, that was pretty cool, I like that one, now I'm going to plug it into Ableton, I'm going to do something with it. This is not going to get you to finish tracks. This is not a DAW in the box. This is not, you know, like I said before, it's not a piece of hardware gear that's going to integrate into your live setup. It's just not those things at all. So I've been forgetting to take sips of my wine as we're here. Cool, let's see where we are. Inspiration randomization is nice, but I'd love to see a configurable default set in version 2, whatever. Yeah, sure. It doesn't, the fact that it auto-populates with random stuff doesn't make it any more difficult to put your own things in there, any more so than it would if it opened up with nothing in those slots. So I think it's designed to get you starting ideas and not necessarily designed to have you pull up tracks from 3 weeks ago and keep working on them. It's like, let's get something started. Let's start to get things kind of knocked out and then send it into Ableton, I think is the idea. But it could be wrong. Let's see, looks like the Move Manager does not export stems. That's what I thought. I didn't think so. Yeah, stereo wave. So yeah, and again, I kind of understand why, because the idea of exporting stems is that you've already got something that's workable, right? You've already got something that's kind of a, you know, maybe not a whole finished song, but a track within that song that's finished that you want to export as a stem to use somewhere else. And also that would be, you know, that would be much more conducive to using this with other DAWs like Logic or whatever. You could export stems and then put them into Logic. I really think that the whole idea behind this was as an Ableton idea starter. So in that case, exporting stems is not, it's not important. It's not a thing because you're just going to put it in Ableton, which will take 1 second, and then you can export stems from Ableton. So there's not really a use case for exporting stems from here, because that's not really where they're I think what it's designed for. Now I could be wrong, and yeah, it would be cool if it did it. Like there's a lot of things that it would be cool if it did it, but it's just not designed for all those things. So. Does it sync to or send MIDI clock? No, it does not. Just Ableton Link. It does not. So as I mentioned before, it is not designed to be a piece of hardware kit that's going to integrate into your live set or that's going to control your live set. You can send MIDI notes and receive MIDI notes, but that's it. It doesn't send and receive clock yet. I mean, it seems like that would be an awfully easy thing for them to implement with firmware. So I would assume that at some point it would do that, but I can also understand why they wouldn't put that in to start with, because if you had that, everybody would be like, oh, this is a thing for my live setup. And then there would be all these limitations, all these things that it's not really made to do in a live setup. And then people would be like, oh, well, this thing sucks because it doesn't do this and this and this and this. So instead, they're just like, no, it's not for that. So it's going to do this particular use case, and it's going to do that really well and not necessarily everything else kind of half-assed. So I get the feeling that that's where they were coming from, but I'm guessing. Now, this is all just my thoughts. Interested to hear you playing some chords with Wavetable, either through MIDI keyboard or pads. So just to let you know, it doesn't tell you what synth you're on. So it just gives you the name. And the only way to really see what synth you're on is to move it into Ableton, and then you can see the synth itself. And so, you know, I would assume, and I could be wrong here, that there is probably, yeah, there is. So there's little icons next to them so that you can see what it is. So like, for example, this bell pad is a wavetable. And then let's just gotta go down to some random thing. So like this one. It does have aftertouch as well. They are touch sensitive. So if the particular sound responds to that, it will do that. So this is a wavetable sound, but then this is a drift. So drift and wavetable are the two synths that it has. And so there's just little icons, and that's all you know. But again, they're not fully functional versions of drift and wavetable in here. So you only have 8 macros that are kind of pre-chosen for you. So like if I'm in drift here, I have filter cutoff, tone, shape, unison, attack, release, oscillator 2 tune, octave combo, and oscillator 2 gain, right? So. So you can see you do have the ability to mess around with the sounds a bit, but they're not fully functioning versions of those synths. So that's why it doesn't say like, oh, this is a wavetable initialized patch, and then you do this with it. You can save presets. So if you have a patch that you mess around with and you come up with something you like, you can save that as your own preset. There's like a user preset folder, and then you can rename those in the software online. So let's see here. Does it have trig conditions? No, it does not. Step sequencer is very basic, so it's basically just basic steps. The closest thing to trig conditions is if you're familiar with the way the Percons works, where you can hit record and you can move knobs and record those knob movements as automation. This will do that as well, but you can't do conditions, you can't do parameter locking, so any of that stuff. So it's really not that type of sequencer. It's very basic. That said, I was messing around with it before. You can connect the Oxy 1 to it and sequence it from the Oxy 1. And in that case, you have conditions and you have all kinds of other stuff. So, and I believe, I don't know if you can sequence it from the Electron devices. I'm not sure. I would have to check that out. I will check that out and let you know. Let's see, can I transfer project files without Ableton Cloud? My friend may be using a cracked Ableton, your friend, asking for a friend. So you can transfer not using Ableton Cloud, but your transfer is over USB. So when you open up Ableton, it will show up in Ableton. But if I'm not wrong, I think that it has to be registered and Ableton has to be registered. I haven't messed around with that yet. Again, I only got this a few hours ago and I'm just now messing around with it for the first time. So this is all new to me as well. But I don't know. I assume that you have to have a registered version, but I could be wrong. Otherwise, you might be able to, and I haven't checked this, but you might be able to export the file and then load the file in Ableton as an Ableton session. I don't know. You might be able to. We'll see. Learned a lot from watching this jam. Thanks. Yeah, my approach is screw around with it until it sounds good. That's the whole thing. New toys. Yes, absolutely. How's the speaker? Shitty. It's awful. I can't even see it. Like, I don't know where it is. It's inside the box somewhere. It sounds like if you were to put your phone speaker without any low end inside a tin can, that's kind of what the speaker sounds like. It sounds awful. So yeah, in all honesty. I will try a USB hub. I don't have one available right now, but I will disconnect one from something else and I'll try one and let you know how it works. But I have to say, I don't think it would work very well because the way the USB works, and this is something I forgot to mention, when we're talking about the limitations. So you can send USB, or you can send MIDI notes in via USB. So like from a keyboard, from a synth. But it acts as though, have you ever used a synth where you put it on the auto channel? So whatever channel it's on is the channel that's controlled by your keyboard, your MIDI controller keyboard. So that's basically the way this works, is whatever synth you're on. So if you change synths, your keyboard will then control whatever synth you're on at that point. There's not a way to say like, I want MIDI channel 1 to control synth 1, MIDI channel 2 to control synth 2. It doesn't work like that. So it's just for controlling a synth. Really what it's for is it's for playing in things to record them in. And then it records them into there and then you can kind of just move on from there. So again, there's a lot of limitations because it wasn't designed to interface with a lot of other gear. It's designed to be its own thing for starting ideas and then using Ableton to finish those ideas out. Let's see. I have bought it. Main use is as a sound source for travel, and then I plan on using it with the Oxy One. Yeah, so it's, I mean, I was messing around with the Oxy One. It's cool, but again, you can only use one channel at a time, and it's for whatever's on the face of it. So you can't sequence a whole bunch of different things from the Oxy and get a ton of things out of it, because again, it's not really designed for that. But you can connect them together if you wanted to do that. What else? Can you quantize to a groove pool? It doesn't use the groove pool like Ableton does, but it does have different amounts of quantization, and it also has, I can't remember if it's called groove or swing. Let's see, what is it? Groove. Yeah, so it's called groove. It's basically swing, and it's a percentage. So it's not like Groove Pool where you would have specific types of swings that you can drop in like you can in Ableton, but it does have the ability to do swing. So it has a function, but not the full function. I think that's kind of the common theme of all of this stuff today. Let's see, what do you think about the live control integration? I haven't used it yet, but I did see a couple demos on it. It looks great. I mean, it looks like it's very instantaneous. There's no lag. And for what it does, you know, to be able to launch clips and stuff like that, it's pretty cool. That reminds me, this also has session view in it. So, for example, right now, if we go back, so we're on like the second set, but then once you go into the set, if you go into this view, this is session view. So sequencers 1 and 2 have patterns on them. That's why they're blinking. 3 and 4 don't have patterns on them, but you can then copy and paste things over. So then you can do an iteration on this new one, and then you can play them in different groups, just like you can launching clips in different groups in Ableton in session view. So it's pretty cool that you can, you know, create a thing, duplicate it, do an iteration, duplicate it, do an iteration, and keep doing like that. Build out what would kind of be a track, and then you can start to play with it. You can also, so let's say you copied these out a bunch. They're all going to be the same, but let's say you were playing, you know, these two, and then you wanted to play this one with it, and then you wanted to play this one with it. You can do those together. Then when you want to stop it, you just touch on an empty row, and it stops that row. And then you can do the same here to stop these. So anyway, yeah. And then I think if you shift and I can't remember how it works. There's a way to launch scenes in this too, but the easiest way to do it is like this way, like with your fingers, to do like launch those two together, do this one. So you can do, just like you can in Ableton, you can do different versions of things, and you can try things out, and then you can play those things in. So let's see what else here. If you hold down a note on a sequence note, you can set the parameter just for that note. So let's see. Well, looky there. You can parameter lock certain things. So that is very cool, actually. So if I hold this down, then you touch the knob, whatever these parameters are up here. So I was just messing with the filter cutoff. So, so if I delete out that now, and I just open the filter cutoff all the way up on that acid sounding bass, here I'll mute all the drums so you can just hear the acid bass. So that's it with the filter totally open. So I can go in on individual steps and go to the filter cutoff. Then you've got glide, which is pretty cool. So that gives me the opportunity to go in and change at least the parameters that are on there, which is pretty cool. I didn't realize I could do that. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, so you can parameter lock. That's pretty cool. I wonder, because I was messing with the drum tracks before, I wonder if you can do it on these. Ooh, looks like you can. Okay. So now I want to mute all of these except for this one. I'm just going to mess with those loop effects. Yeah, so that's cool. So yeah, you can parameter lock. Great. Even better. I thought it was cool before I could parameter lock. So yeah. So let's see here. My biggest question is, can a MIDI keyboard control the 16 pitches on a drum track? I don't know. I would assume so. All right. So now let's find out. Let's connect up the, I've got the Oxy 1 here, so I can connect this one and see. All right, so did I send out? All right, so I've got one thing going out. All right, I'll unmute this. So right now, that's, move this over here. So that's this track on the Oxy One sequencing this sequencer or synthesizer on here. So now here, if I was to change to a different synth now, you see it's sequencing that one now. So let's see if I select a, no. Yeah, so no, it's not doing. So it's not doing anything other than keeping time for some reason, which is a little weird. Oh, you know what? I wonder if it does it by pitch. Oh, it does. Okay, so what it's doing is, just like if you have this in a drum rack in Ableton, you can have each one of the instruments be a different key on a keyboard. So each one of the sample slots be a different key on a keyboard. So it's basically doing the same. So each sample slot is given a note. So if you tune this to a particular note, it will play that key. So you couldn't, I don't think so, and I'll check and see if I can find a way around this, but based on that, I don't think there's a way to play the 16 steps on an individual note from an outboard key sequencer, because it's gonna take the note value and assign that to a sample slot rather than to a pitch. So I don't think it would work. So there's the answer to your question, I think. Not very confident in that, but we'll see. I'll mess around with it some more and see. So anyway, where are we? Thanks for all the questions, by the way, and for everybody joining in. There's a ton of you guys. I appreciate that. I know it's late at night for most people. Let's see here. Oh, that's why you love my reviews. Well, this isn't really a review, but thanks. This is a me screwing around with a new piece of kit video. Can you save a wavetable synth preset from Ableton into the Move? Not yet, but they did say on the Sonic State interview that that's going to be next up in firmware. So you will be able to, but you just can't yet. What kind of headphones do you use and do you recommend them? These are the III, can't remember which model they are. They're the wireless ones. So you can see there's no wires on my heads at all. But they're being sent from a transmitter that's over on my mixing desk. So it's not Bluetooth. They can do Bluetooth, and they can also, you can plug a wire into them if you want to. But if you use the transmitter, you get basically zero latency. It's like, whatever, like 3 milliseconds or something. So almost no latency. Yes, I do recommend them. I love them. They're super comfortable. You can wear them for hours. And I love wearing them in my studio because I'm in the basement of my house, family's upstairs, and this way I can rock out and move around the room as if I was in a room with the speakers playing, and I don't get tangled up in headphones and all that stuff. So yeah, I love them. I think they're awesome. Let's see what else. The Move looks to be everything the KO2 I bought isn't. Yeah, I have one too. If anybody wants to buy one, I will sell it to them. That thing is not fun. I hate I don't want to sound like I just like shit on Teenage Engineering, but I just hate that each time I get something from them, I'm disappointed in it in some way. And it's just such a bummer because I want to like their stuff. I think their stuff is beautiful and their design is beautiful, although the KO is not the most beautiful thing, but I want to love it. And then there's always like something that makes it really difficult for me to love it. So I wish they would fix that, but whatever. Let's see, performance effects would be rad. Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, as I was messing around saying I wish I had performance effects, I was thinking of just what I was saying to you guys all along. This is not a performance instrument. It's not made for that. It's not made to be part of a live setup. It's not made to play a live set. It's not made to do any of that stuff. So I get why it doesn't have it. But at the same time, it would be totally cool if it did, because again, when I'm writing, and this is just me, but if you were to look at my Ableton template on the master track of my template that I use in Ableton, I have like a DJ effects rack that I can mess with when I'm writing stuff, because I want to hear what it would sound like if I was performing it. And then I don't ever like include that in the actual final production, but I use it as a writing tool to kind of test out ideas. So from that standpoint, I would love to have some performance effects in here that I could mess around with stuff. Like there are effects so you can kind of emulate performance effects, but there aren't any kind of master bus performance effects, which would be really super cool if they can implement that later on. So I would love that. I guess it goes against the sketchpad idea unless you could record them. Yeah, for sure. It still has 4 sequencer lanes, isn't it? Only the instruments differ, where it can be multi-timbral synth to be played melodically, or drum synth that contains single samples per note or key. So, yeah, we talked about this way back at the beginning, but I'll go over this again because it's worth mentioning. So each one of the 4 sequencers can be either a synth, which can be a polyphonic synth, or monophonic synth. I think it's 8 notes, a polyphony maybe, maybe more, maybe less. Or it can be a drum rack, which the drum rack is basically 16 sample slots for one-shot samples. You can actually put longer samples in there, it just doesn't time stretch them. So it's 16 sample slots, but each one of those can then be played using these 16 steps on the side. So like this sound. So within that one sample slot, you can sequence melodically, you can record in using pads melodically. So the stuff that I was doing before, like this thing, this is all on one track, right? Because there's a lot of drum stuff, but there are also so like this recording is this sequence that's here, but you can see the notes jumping around. So like you can put individual notes per step, or you can record them in melodically using this 16 steps thing. So it's not only 4 tracks, it's actually up to 64 tracks, as long as you don't mind them being sample slots. So what I've got is I have this set up so that, or I had set up, so when I was doing the first thing that I was messing around with, this was the first jam that I was messing around with when I first switched this on today, was this. So this whole thing, everything you're listening to right there is all on one track, including all those melodic parts. So like the chord stabs and the kind of glitchy bit. This, what is it? I think it was on this one. Yeah. So this part right here is, you can see the notes jumping around in the thing. So this was sequenced in on 16, like 16th notes, but each one was a different note so that I could get that kind of melodic line. And that was all on one track of the drum track. So again, you can have up to 64 tracks, but you can't have 64 synth tracks. You could have 4 synth tracks, or you can have combinations of 16 track drum tracks and single track synth tracks. So the way I had this one set up originally, when I was just messing around, and I think I'm gonna try to build some stuff out like this just to see how it works, is having track 1 be a drum rack, like what I was just showing you, so that it's got mostly drums and percussion. Track 2 being also a drum rack, but not with any drums and percussion, having this be all melodic things. So I can pick 1 or 2 at a time and use the effects that are per track effect to see how those sound together. And then have sequencer 3 and sequencer 4 be synths. So I can use those for what they're supposed to be used for. The other thing you can do too is if you come up with something that you like on a synth track, you can mute everything but that track, and you can resample that in as a sample and load it into a drum track. So there's ways to move stuff around. You can even do one shots if you like. If you create So let's say you really like this sound, you can record this one shot, and then you can load that into a drum rack, and then you've got the 16 steps, and then you can do all that stuff with it. So it's pretty cool. Let's see here. So yeah, that's to answer the question. It has 4 sequencers, kind of, but in the same way that the Oxy has 4 sequencers. They can be multi-track sequencers, just like this can be drum racks, which is fun. Let's see. Technically more than 4 lanes. Yes, exactly. Can it play sample melodically in a drum kit? Yes. Is there MIDI clock sync via USB and or in or out? No, there is not. Not yet. I mean, I assume they could do that. I don't understand why it doesn't have it, but I mean, I do understand why it doesn't have it, because it's not made to sync with other gear and be a hardware performance gear. It's made to be an idea generator that connects to Ableton. When you connect it to Ableton, it syncs to Ableton and there's no problem at all. How much can you edit the reverbs, or do you just have to export your own reverb presets ready to it? So you can't export reverb presets to it. For one thing, you can't export anything to it yet. I know they're working on that, but you can't do it yet. Now, what you can do is, let's see, let's go to reverbs. So if you go to the reverb section, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 different reverbs. And those reverbs have parameters. So I can go in and obviously I can adjust dry, wet, but then you've also got shelf gain, high shelf, low shelf, stereo image, pre-delay, filter frequency in, room size, and decay time. So you do have parameter control over each one of the reverbs, and you've got 18 different reverbs. So pretty cool. I mean, that's kind of a lot of flexibility for something that's, you know, this small. Let's see. Can it record, import, and warp loops? It can record loops. You can import sample loops, but it cannot warp yet. They did mention again in the Sonic State interview, the guy who's the product designer from Ableton, when Nick Bat was interviewing him, the guy said that they're working on importing wavetable and presets for drift into this from Ableton, and they're working on the warp capabilities within this. So then once you get warp capabilities, that opens it up to be a stem player. So all kinds of things that you could do, but it doesn't do that yet. But they said it may. So let's see, what else? Where are we? So a new style drum rack is basically the same as a group in Machina. Yes, kind of. Each pad can be played as a single sample or a loop, but also switch to keyboard mode. Yeah, it's that's the idea. It's not that you can switch it to keyboard mode. It's that when you're in this so in the kind of drum mode here, the left 16 pads are the individual instruments, and then the right ones are the 16 steps of whatever one you're on. If you're in that mode, you can switch out of that mode, and then this side becomes kind of useless. I don't know why they have it like that. But so like if you switch to this one, now that becomes so whatever one you're on, this becomes a step. So you don't have to switch into a keyboard mode. There's always kind of a keyboard mode right next to it for whichever one you're on, whichever sample slot you're on. And like I mentioned before, you can change out of that. Is it in here? Yeah, I guess it wasn't. Where was it? No, that's session mode. Oh yeah, here it was. So if you go to the key mode, if it says here now it's in key, and then it says what key it's in. So then everything is in key. But if you change that one to chromatic, then you get you can switch back up to that. So I like it in key, but you can put it any way you want. So that's when you're just in this kind of melodic mode. So putting it in key, it's kind of like in the Electron devices where you have the keyboard fold. This is kind of like keyboard fold, and then that's also the same screen in the Electron where you put it in whatever key you want to put it in, and it's the same here. So pretty handy. Wireless headphones with next to no latency. Yeah, they're the only ones I found that work. I think there are some other ones out there, but these ones work awesome. Like I've had no issues with them, and I totally love them. Only difference is that on Machina, each group can hold more parts containing MIDI info. Yeah, it's been a while since I used the Machina, so I don't remember exactly the workflow. But yeah, I mean, like if you're talking about the Machina Plus, that's you know way more instrument than this, because that's designed as a standalone instrument. That kind of compares capability wise more to the Push 3. This is not that at all. It's not even designed to be close to that. This is an idea generator specifically for Ableton. Let's see here. Ditto on Teenage Engineering. I had owned the OP1 for a while, but sold it for something that wasn't frustrating toy. KO2, the Pocket Operator on steroids, but still, yeah, it's like the OP1. When I got the OP1, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like it does so many things. And then there was no MIDI integration and no kind of functional sequencers. So it made it really hard for my particular workflow. So it gave me a reason not to like it. Then Same with the OPZ, that one does more, but the workflow I just didn't like. And then I got the KO because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try this one. It looks kind of cool. Same thing. It's like kind of awkward and shifty around and stuff like that. So I think that part of it is perception. I think they set up their things as like, these are these amazing pieces of equipment that do everything. So then when you get it and it doesn't do everything, you're disappointed. I think one of the cool things with the Ableton Move is that they've set it up and saying, this is not a do everything machine. So when it doesn't do everything, don't be pissed because it's not supposed to. It's supposed to be an idea generator that runs Ableton Note that goes in one direction and moves things into Ableton. And so it's really super fun. I'm having a lot of fun playing with it, but it is definitely not an all-in-one, kind of solution like a Digitact or, whatever, an MPC. It's definitely not that. Let's see, you could run the out from the Move into a Roland SP404 for performance effects, or if you have a circuit rhythm and you use the performance effects from that. Yeah, you could, for sure. Like I have it right now just because the way I have my audio, so I set this up really quick today. Here, I can show you guys. I'll do a little switch around with camera views so you can see where I am. So basically all of my live setup is right here. That was here underneath the camera and I just kind of slid it over, and going out of my live setup into my mixer and into speakers and into the streaming software and everything was all going through the analog heat. So I just basically ran this out and into the analog heat just because it was already connected. It was just the easier way to get stuff connected. And so because of that, when I was messing around and saying like, oh, I wish I had performance effects, it's like, well, I do, like I can do this. And then I do have a high pass filter. I have a high pass filter in the analog heat. Right, so I do have things that are like that. So yeah, you could run this through other things for sure. You could run, you could run the output of this through the Oxy Meta. You could run the output of this through effects pedals or through a Pioneer RMX 1000 or all kinds of, like any kind of effects processor if you really, really wanted to. But it's not, again, not really designed for that. It's not really designed to be a live performance instrument. So could you play live on it? Totally. Would you want to if you had an option of other stuff? Probably not, because there's probably way better things for the same price that you could use to play live. It's not really that at all. Not impressed with the KO2. Yeah, I wasn't either. I was going to put it on reverb, but the fee on reverb is going to make me get like $12 from it. So just going to keep it until somebody wants it and then I'll give it away. Please show us if the set change is instant and no latency. Good question. Let's try. Let's see, because I had all these muted, so it's not sounding right. That's why. All right, so now let's try it. Now that we've got some drums. Not really. So here's the thing: it's changing right when you change it. So it's not waiting till the end of the bar. So it is kind of instant. So if you do it correct, like timing wise, then it sounds like it would be. But if you go back and forth, you see you can do it like whenever, so it would throw it off. So I haven't checked to see, there might be something in the settings. Let's Doesn't seem like, yeah, there's not any settings for that. So it doesn't seem like, again, not a live performance thing. So it's not really designed to do that. It doesn't seem like it has to load. So it's not like there's a load lag between. It just doesn't seem like it's set up to switch from pattern to pattern because it's not really designed for live performance. So yeah, I would worry it would break on reverb. Yeah, me too. How are the pads? They basically feel exactly the same as the push. Not the push 3, but the push 2. They do feel, yes, others, like, they are touch sensitive, I mean pressure sensitive. Velocity sensitive, I guess is the official term. And they do have aftertouch too. So like if you're on a synth, if it's a synth that has aftertouch, that one is not. Let's see if we can find one that is. Can't really tell if that one is or not. Yeah, so this one is. So you can see there's aftertouch on this. So yeah, I mean, they're awesome for me because I'm not like Mr. Joe finger drummer. So I don't really need that. But it was funny listening to the hot takes from basically it seems like everybody who had something to say about this in the first 24 hours was an MPC guy. And they were all like, oh, the pads, the pads, the pads, the pads. It doesn't do what an MPC does. It doesn't do it. It's like, no, it doesn't. It also doesn't do what, an Octatrack does. It also doesn't do what a mini log does. Like it's not what it's supposed to do. It has a function. It does that function. And if you don't want that function, move along. Like go to your next thing. There's no reason to be like, oh, mine's better. Okay, whatever. Yours is better. You're so much cooler than everybody else. Let's see. Not a performance device yet. Yeah, I think that's kind of the theme is it's and this is probably a broader philosophical conversation, but I mentioned this earlier. I have never been one to buy something for what it might be someday. You have to decide, is it worth buying today? I'm going to switch out here and change my view. Is it worth buying today? If it's worth buying today, buy it. And if it's not worth buying today, don't buy it. Don't buy it and then bitch that it doesn't have things, or buy it and bitch that they didn't give you the update that they owed you. Like you're buying a thing today. And if they give you something in the future, that's a bonus. That's a plus. So yes, it's not a performance thing yet, and it may never be. And that's going to be just fine for some people. And then for other people, they will never be able to use it because they're looking for a performance thing. That's cool. If you want a performance thing, get a performance thing. This is not it right now and may never be. But if you're looking for something to have a ton of fun on, writing stuff that sounds really, really good, that is a pleasure to play because the user interface, the feel, the touch, the workflow is an absolute joy to use so far. And you want to use that and you find inspiration in that to get ideas started and then finish those ideas in your DAW, that's what this is for. And so if that's what you're looking for, man, it's cool. And if it's not what you're looking for, move along. Like there's something for you. We live in this time when there's so much amazing gear out there that there's absolutely something for everybody. And it's not the same thing for different people, right? It's like, I love electronic devices. Some people hate them. I can't stand the Roland workflow. Some people love it. I hate touchscreens. Other people think they're the best thing ever. It's just like, and nobody's right and wrong. It's just whatever's good for you. And so if this is good for you, totally get it, and you're gonna love it. If it is what it is, and if that's what you're looking for, they did that in a very, very well executed way. It is not all those other machines, and it shouldn't be, I don't think. So, cheers. Let's see here. Different BPM on different projects. I don't think BPM saves per project. Let me just check really quick. And they're called sets in here, just being the Ableton thing that they are. So if we go to set 1, no, let's go set 2 and go to tempo. Let's change that tempo. And then let's go to set 1. Yes, tempo is individual per set. So yeah, I coincidentally had them at the same tempo, but if you change one of them, now when you go back and forth, this one's at 140, this one's at 135. So, yep, you can. Better than the 404 pads. Yeah, I actually have only messed around with the 404 a couple times. I don't remember what the pads are like because pads are never a big thing for me. So like, I'm like, yeah, it's got pads. Cool. Good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not a finger drummer, so. Hey, good explanation of this thing. I'm wondering what synth controls are available in the empty initialized presets. I don't think there are initialized presets. Let's go back and check really quick here and see. There are not initialized presets. I don't think. Let me see if there's an init. Nope. There are no initialized presets. So you're starting from a preset always when you go into something. To answer the question, the parameters are different for every single sound because I think what they did is whoever was designing the sounds for Ableton that they were going to load in here, the sounds that they designed in Drift and Wavetable, they said, okay, for this individual sound that I made, these are the 8 most important parameters to get some flexibility and something cool out of it. So I think that's what they did, is they just chose them like that. So there is no initialized patch. Let's see here, where are we? Seems like there's no effect tail. So let's see here. Let me this. So if we go into this and we go into the reverb, that's the tail of the reverb. Now I can shorten that up. Or make it way longer. Yeah. So there is. I mean, you have control over the decay time of the reverb, and you have control also on the delays as well. Notice that before. Okay, where are we? Sorry, lost track in the in the chat. Can you chain patterns? not in an automatic way. So there's like when you go into the this is the session mode, so you can't there's not like a song mode, because again, it's not designed to be a performance instrument. It's basically set up like the session view in Ableton, except it doesn't have the automatic run on things, I don't think. I mean, to be honest, I haven't dug into it, so there may be. I don't think there is. Nope. No, I'm not seeing any way to chain things together. So I don't think so. I would assume that he wouldn't, because the idea is not to have this play things automatically for you, because again, it's not a performance thing. It's designed for you to be sketching on. So in that like clip launch session view, you can go in and launch different things in different orders, and you can move from thing to thing, and you can have different variations if you want that you've kind of pre-prepared, but but I don't think there's any way to have it do it automatically. Okay. Chain patterns would be too hopeful to hope for a splice drum sample browser option. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. I would assume that they're going to do more with the sample stuff, but yeah, I don't think they're going to do anything with splice. We'll see. Okay, not a performance device yet. Yes, different BPM. We already saw that one. Let's see. Where are we? You can start from an initialized wavetable or drift. Okay, if you can, I haven't found it. It doesn't show up in any of the banks, including the user bank. There's no kind of initialized any patch in there. But I'll check it out and see if I can find something like that. To be honest, it's not that big of a deal for me, because for something like this, I'm not doing sound design. I'm not interested in like creating sounds from scratch. So, so for me, it doesn't really matter that I can't do a patch from scratch. So I would basically just find a bass, and then I would tweak it. I would find a bass that was kind of close to what I wanted. It feels like that's kind of what their idea was for this. Let's see, love it. Yeah, me too. Had an MPC-1 and the pads weren't that amazing. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't know what makes good pads or not. I mean, I'm assuming it's like anything else. When you're really good at something like finger drumming, there's little differences that are gonna make a difference to you. They don't make any difference to me because I suck at finger drumming. So it would not be for me at all. If it is MPE compliant, I think so. I think it will take in MPE from keyboards, but I could be wrong. The pads on this are not MPE. They're just aftertouch. So I think you can, I think I read somewhere, but I could be wrong. I'd have to look it up again. That's something I would check on their website. But if I'm not wrong, I think you can plug in an MPE keyboard, and a few of the patches respond to MPE, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's see, the Korg log expansions weren't necessary for the price, but they added so much. Yeah, I mean, and that's the way I kind of look at it. I think that whenever these companies do a firmware update and they add new features, that for me, that's just a gift. That's like them saying, hey, thanks for being a customer. We would love to give you something as somebody who supported us 6 months or 2 years or 5 years ago when you bought this machine. Here's a gift for you. And that's how I look at firmware updates, unless they're like bug fixes to fix something that was broken in the first place. Those they kind of owe you. Like they have to fix those because they gave you something that was broken. But when they give you new features, like it kind of grinds me the wrong way when I see people online bitching online that you know, Electron or Roland or Oxy or whoever owes them an update. Like, well, they haven't updated this in so long. They need to do this new feature. They need to do this. It's like, they don't need to do shit. They sold you a thing, you bought the thing, and for all the rest of time when you bought something, that was what you got. Nobody owed you anything beyond what you bought. There wasn't this like, buy this with the promise of X number of new features every year. Like that for me, it grinds me the wrong way because that feels like an incredibly entitled way to look at things. Like, you owe me an update. You owe me new features because you put them in that other thing. And it's like, yeah, we put that in that other thing. You want them? Buy the other thing. That's how this normally works, like in the real world. But I think recently people have gotten this whole mentality of like, you have to give me an update. It's like, I don't have to give you shit. I already sold you the thing. You already bought it. It's already good. It was worth what you paid for it. And if you get something else, be thankful you got an extra thing, not, you know, like, oh, it's about time. They haven't updated this. They haven't given me a new thing in forever. They suck. It's like, that drives me crazy. It really drives me crazy. So please don't be like that. Let's see. Still amazed at its value proposition for those new to music production. If I could get a combo hardware production device and a decent controller at that price when I started. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good deal. I was pretty surprised when I saw the price. And I have to tell you, even more surprised when I saw the build quality of it. This is significantly more robust feeling. And obviously this could all fall apart tomorrow. Like, I have no idea how long this is going to last and how durable it's going to be or whatever. But from the initial feel, this feels way more robust than a circuit or even than a like an OPZ, or honestly, this feels as good, if not better, than the OP1 as far as like quality of build. It's not a metal chassis, but it's obviously well, I mean, it might be a metal chassis. It's not a metal top sheet because it feels heavy enough that it's probably metal inside. And the battery obviously weighs something as well. But for being not a piece of metal, it feels really, really well built. It feels as well built as the Push 3. So I think they did a fantastic job from that. It feels more expensive than it is, I guess, is the way to look at it. The way the pads feel, the way that the encoders feel, the way the buttons feel, everything just feels really premium. And for something that's $450, I think that's it's great, because I think a lot of companies that do a $450 thing, I mean, just look at what Teenage Engineering does for $450. You know, I mean, I know the KO was like less than, I think it was like $399. So it was like $400 or $299. I can't remember. But still, it is a cheap, chintzy piece of plastic. Like, you can bend the whole thing, and everybody had troubles with the little the cap for the fader, that it was breaking off, and even the stem for that's plastic, and it just feels super, super cheap. This does not at all. This feels like sturdy, feels heavy duty, which again, I don't know if it actually is, and I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that that's how it feels at first glance. But yeah, I mean, I was impressed when I took it out. It was much better than I thought it was. Let's see. It's exactly what I want, and for it to sample with ease. Yeah, samples, I mean, sampling is pretty cool. I would say, because it doesn't do time stretching and there's not really a good way to sample chop, you can change start point and end point. So you can kind of trim, but there's not a way to chop samples other than there's a manual way. So if you're recording in, you can like manually sample to individual pads in real time, which is kind of cool. But there's not a lot of sample editing. So I would say for one shots, it's great. And for longer samples, it's okay. I mean, it does stuff, but it's not a fully functioning, sample editor. It's kind of lop off the ends, and here's your trimmed sample. And then you put it into Ableton, and then you've got the sample, and then you can move it. Like, you can sample into this using the mic. You can mess around with stuff a little bit. Then when you connect to Ableton, you've got that sample. You can just drag it into a simpler, and then you've got everything you want with it. So anyway, that's how I would use it. Let's see here. Saw some empty drift and wavetable stuff on another video, but maybe I was tripping. Yeah, I haven't seen anything like that, but might be. What else? And you can resample, but can you layer sounds? I mean, yes, you can layer sounds by resampling, which is one thing. So you could have sounds because you're resampling the main. So anything you're playing on that main, you can resample into a new thing. Then you can add, another synth part to it and have them both play out the main and resample, and then add something else to it and have them play out the main and resample. So yes, you can layer that way for sure. Yeah. So it does feel good. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. Speakers suck. The ones in yours distorted immediately. Yeah, it's like, it sounds like the speaker. I can't even think of what would be like an old thing that had a speaker on it. Like a thing that has a speaker that's not supposed to have a speaker. It's kind of like what it sounds like. The speaker is definitely non-functional. Like that first groove, I tried to listen to it on the speaker, and you couldn't even hear half the instruments because the frequency response probably only goes down to like 150 hertz. So, or 100 or 200 hertz. Like anything below that, you don't even hear. So yeah, it was pretty funny. It's an awful speaker. Is the chassis the same as the Push 3? I don't know. I mean, it kind of feels like it. It's definitely way thinner. So, I mean, it's not the same in that it's the exact same thing, but it does feel like the same material as far as like the same type of plastic that the top sheet is made out of. And so it feels like the inner frame is probably similar as well. It doesn't have that kind of grippy, rubbery surface that the Pushes have on it. And the buttons aren't like that either. The buttons are more plastic and less rubber. So, but yeah, it's feels great. Can you play audio through it? No, there's not like a through. You can, so you would put it on a sample track and monitor. So you can monitor through, and because you're doing it in a sample slot, there's not individual effects per sample slot. So no, you couldn't really do it that way. Sample effects are nice. Yes, they are. I love how they added just enough screen to give you just enough information. Yeah, I agree. When I first saw the pictures, I thought the screen looked too small. And I really love the way the touch encoders work, so whatever you touch, that becomes what's on the screen, and it's really instantaneous. So like if you're just like going along, you can really just go from thing to thing and you instantly see what it is. So I just think it was a really nice implementation of a workflow with a really small screen, because it's basically, it almost feels like if you had a screen this size below each one of the knobs, so that when you touch this knob, these would all be below it and these would be below it, but they just have it so that you're using the same screen, because you don't need to have both knobs at the same time. So I think it's pretty cool. I like it for a conservation of space on the surface of this thing. I think it's pretty cool. It has 2 speakers, really? They sound too bad speakers. They could have saved the money and just not put 2 speakers. I would rather it had no speakers and it had like a MIDI clock in and out. That would be like, do that trade-off. That would be awesome. Yeah, material. I think it's the same material. I mean, I don't want to say it is, because I don't know. It feels like it. If it's not, they did a good enough job of making it feel like it. I mean, honestly, you put the two next to each other and and they did a really great job. It's kind of like, teenage engineering, when you put their stuff next to each other, you can tell it's from the same company. It has kind of like, there's a vibe of the kind of the family of those machined aluminum chassis and the way the buttons are recessed. And so everything kind of has the same feel. And when you put this next to the Push 3, they feel like they belong to the same family. Even though they're totally different software and they're totally different hardware, they do different things and whatever, you can tell they're related, which is cool. I think they did a great job with the design from that standpoint. I think it was very cool. Charging mine has been slow. So I read a thing in the manual that said that, are you charging it using the power brick that came with it? Because I did read a thing that said that if you're charging it via USB, it has to be a 7-volt or more USB output. So like, for example, if you were to plug it into a laptop, it won't charge. It will actually slowly drain. It'll drain slower than it would if it was plugged in, but it'll still drain. And I would assume it's the same if you use like a small wall wart or something like that. So I've been using the round little power brick thing that came with it. You can see here, it's kind of odd. It's round. I've been using that and it seems to be going okay. Let's see where I'm at. Yeah, so it's at 100% now. And I don't know how long it's been at 100%. I mean, it didn't take long. I mean, I could see it moving up as soon as I plugged it in. So I would double check that you've got it plugged into the right thing. Does it have choke groups? I don't know if it has particular choke groups, but I do know that, so let's go back to, still trying to find my way around this damn thing. So if I go back and I mute everything here except for, yeah. So if we do, so you can hear that the open hat's choking the closed hat. And there's a step on every one of the 16 steps. So I know that they choke each other. This is on the 909 kit. So I don't know if they just did that for realism, because on the real 909, the open hat chokes the closed hat. I don't know if they just did it like that, but I know it does it there, but I haven't seen anything for like creating any choke groups of your own, and all that stuff. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. Like I said, I'm just finding my way around this, so there's plenty of stuff I have no idea how to do yet. I'm just kind of figuring it out. So, no MIDI clock. There's no MIDI clock in or out. Yeah, over USB there's not. The only clock sync is Ableton Link. So if you have devices that can be controlled by, or that work with Ableton Link, this will work and you can sync with those, but there's no kind of standard MIDI, whether that's USB MIDI or DIN MIDI or TRS MIDI. And then there's no, obviously, like CV clock either. Let's see, I saw someone say you can use pretty much any USB interface with the USB port. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would want to. You could, but I don't know why you would want to. Are you talking about to connect USB to other devices? Because like I said, it's whatever you have connected to is only going to control whatever synth you're on that page. So having multiple things connected wouldn't really do you any good, because you couldn't have different things controlling different synths the way this is set up. So yeah. Smaller than I thought. Yeah, I thought it was going to be, well, I don't know. I guess I didn't know how big I thought it was going to be. I was happy with the size when I got it. Like I think it's nice and small for what it is. And I also think that it will be very, very portable. And I also think as well, if it were smaller, it wouldn't be as comfortable to use, because they would have had to cram things a lot closer together in the buttons. So I think they did a good job. I'm very happy. Don't forget to show some love. Yeah, show some love. Slap the like, subscribe. You can do all those YouTuber things. Tough, what's up? Are you just waking up or just getting home? You're crazy, man. You're probably just getting home. Hey, Alex, what's going on? These guys, Tough and Alex, were both in my live performance course. So, which I guess I should plug that. I've been on them for a while now and I haven't plugged my course. If you are interested, I am doing an online course for improvised live performance. It's like 50 plus videos that you can watch on your own. And then during the month-long cohort, we do twice a week, we do a 1 hour Zoom call, group call, where we get together and do question and answer about the session for that week. Then you get a 1 hour one-on-one at some point during the month with me that we do via Zoom. And then every week you can submit a up to a 10-minute video of you doing live performance. And I give you feedback via email. So about mixing and song selection and transitioning and things like that. So I'll give you feedback and advice and input. And then you also get to be part of the online community of all the people that have taken the course. And every time there's a new cohort of the course, it adds more people. So there's a bunch of people in there now and they're kind of getting to know each other and asking each other questions and sharing live sets and sharing gear and all that stuff. So if you're into it, I would love to have you. I'm doing the signups right now for the November cohort, which starts November 5th. There's not a cohort right now. There's nothing that's still available for October, but the November one still has some space available. So if you're interested in that, go to, there's a link in the video description, but you can go to circolive.com/courses and go ahead and sign up there. And yeah, it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. Everybody's been amazing. People from all over the world, all different levels, using all different kinds of gear. But the whole common thing is being able to get better at performing live in kind of an improvised way so that you can have more fun playing on your own or in front of crowds or however you want to do it. It's not just for people that want to I want to be a pro. It is for those people too, but it's also for people that just want to have more fun playing with their gear and get more comfortable, explore their gear better, learn some techniques. It's really is a whole system about how to perform improvised live hardware, rather than just here's how the gear works. It really is a system for how to put things together, how to do a gig, how to what to bring when you travel, how to figure out how to get paid, how to network to get gigs, how to choose what gear you have, how to connect it, how to run different things. So definitely check it out if you're interested. I would love to have you in there. It's filling up kind of fast, so if you want to do it, go ahead and get on there now and get signed up. And if you're on my Patreon, there's a discount code for the patrons that's on there. So if you're already on the Patreon, go check that out. If you're not, sign up for the Patreon. You can sign up for really cheap. I think that you can get on for $1, and then that gets you the discount code. So it'll save you quite a bit off the course. So if you're interested, I would love to have you on there. The course has been a ton of fun. I think people have learned a lot. Ask these guys. I'm sure they'll tell you. All right. USB MIDI interface regarding MIDI clock. So what was the question? Yeah, there's not a way to do MIDI clock. So an interface wouldn't do any good because this doesn't receive or send MIDI clock in any form other than Ableton Link. That's the only clock sync that it has. The templates folder in the browser holds the initial. All right, let's take a look at that. Let's see here. There we go to Voice Wins templates. Oh, there we go. Cool. So this has an initialize for drum kit, a choke kit. So there's your choke group thing. Gate kit, sampler, analog drift, analog filter 1, 2, mono, noise, shape, FM operator, FM 2x2 operator, wavetable, distortion, signs, and voice. Cool. So yeah, so those are in the template section. So I will mess around with those some more and see what they sound like and get back to you. Let you know. Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. Sample chopping, no. I mean, that's the quick answer. You can chop off the beginning and the end, but you're not even really chopping. You can adjust start point and end point of a sample. So if you've got a loop and you want to just take a piece out of it, you can adjust down to that, but that's about it. It is not a sample chopper. Side chaining functionality, no. There is not. The course is super dope. Thanks, Alex. Glad you liked it. Just arrived. I knew it. Summarize my opinion on the new device, so you don't have to go back and watch the 2 hours of video. Actually, we've been going longer than that. Damn, it's been a long one. My overall impression, I'm really enjoying it a lot. I think it's very cool. I think it does what it says on the tin, but it also does way more than I expected it to, for being a device that is designed to be an idea sketchpad for Ableton. It is not a live performance device. It does not integrate with other gear. It has no MIDI clock sync in and out. You can't connect it via MIDI sync to other gear. You can connect a keyboard to play it. You can play other synths from it, but you can't clock sync it other than Ableton Link. So yeah, it's in that sense, what they've said it is a sketchpad for Ableton, and I would agree with them. That's exactly what it is. I think it's really fun. I think it sounds amazing. I think it's really fun to play. The interface is awesome. I have to say, like, for as much as we were saying like, oh, I want them to do this and do this for updates, I don't necessarily want them to update this one. What I hope this turns into at some point is an Ableton Move Pro that has MIDI in and out, that has, the ability to sync, the ability to do some other things, and warping samples and chopping samples and things like that, but in this same form factor, I think would be really super cool. I'd like to see a lot more hardware ins and outs. Maybe CV in and out would be super cool. TRS MIDI, at least in and out, would be great. Being able to clock sync. But again, those are all hardware things. So that would be in another device. And so I don't expect this to be that. I think that this is really good for what it is. But I would love to see at some point an Ableton Move Plus or an Ableton Move Pro or whatever they want to call it. Because I think the form factor and the workflow and the user interface and the inputs, the knobs and buttons and all that stuff are really, really, really well done. So I think that they've got something here. I think they've got something that they could build on with other devices in this same vein. And even before they do that, I think this device is very, very cool. It's a lot of fun. And I will definitely be using this. I'm going to Amsterdam next week for some gigs at the Amsterdam Dance event, and I'll definitely be taking this on the plane with me because I think it's going to be super fun to just sit there and jam on. So yeah, that would be tons and tons of fun. Let's see what else. Sorry if this has already been answered, but mute groups on drums. Not really groups, like not specific groups where you can say, okay, this is this group, but like I said, the drums are on these drum racks. So like this is a set of drums that's here. So if you want to mute multiple things at the same time, you can mute multiple things at the same time, but there aren't groups because again, it's not designed as a performance device. So a lot of the performance functionality things, it just doesn't have because it's not designed to be a performance device at all. What else? Do you get a lot of synth presets? Get it techno? Yes. I mean, like I was showing you guys before. Here, I can show you again. It was so I was using. I'm going to take most of these out because there was a lot of random sounds in here. So this sound that's right here, that melodic piece right there, it's cool because you can go into the parameters of this. And I mean, with a 909 kick and a 909 hat, and then some toms and claps. And then all we need is some rave stabs. So yeah, it does all those things. Yeah, it's fun. All right, back to the questions. And actually everything that I'm using in here is all the internal stuff. I haven't loaded any samples yet. That's another thing I haven't touched on in this that I was really pleasantly surprised about. This has 64 gigs of memory. And when I saw the interview with the guys from Ableton, they said that, you know, once you take out the operating system and everything that's kind of already built into it, presets and stuff like that, there's still 50 gigs of internal storage space for samples. So because I'm just gonna be loading one shots into this probably just because that's what it really does really well. 50 gigs of one shots is like more than you could use in 10 lifetimes. So yeah, it's It has tons of space. So I'm going to try to load in a bunch of samples tomorrow. So it can techno-ish right now. We'll see what it does with my samples in it. So what's going to be interesting is I'm going to load samples into this to make music with. Then I'm going to use this to create samples that I'm going to use in my live set. So I'm going to use this as kind of like it's supposed to be. I'm going to use it as a sketchpad to, try out some ideas and some different patterns and some different, different effects and different things like that within this. And then when I find stuff that I like, I will either load it into Ableton and finish it and then put it into my samplers, my Octatrack and my Digitac 2, or I will sample directly out from this into my Digitac 2 and have cool new stuff that I can use for my gigs at AD. So, yeah. What else? Thank you for the stream. Can you set up a choke group or multiple loops play continuously and you solo a single loop? You're welcome for the stream, by the way. And I don't know, I haven't set up choke groups at all. I just now saw that it has a choke template. So I'm gonna have to see how that works. I have no clue at all. But I am not sure. But I would assume that you could do that. I don't know if you could do, yeah. I mean, I guess you probably could. But it also, like one thing I noticed is with the hi-hat, the closed hats and open hats. You know, the closed hat is being choked by the open hat. It even does that when the open hat is muted. So I don't know if muting and unmuting within a group would allow different things to play, because it seems like the choke, at least in the 909 kit, which again, this may be because it's trying to be authentic to an original 909 where the open hat choked the closed hat. But at least in this one that I found so far, it's the choke group wouldn't act the way you're talking about. But I can check it and see. Worth a try, for sure. Get a push 3. I have a push 3. It's, if you look, can you see it's right there, right over my shoulder, right there. Yes, there is my push 3. But yeah, a pro, I mean, the thing is, and it's like, yeah, well, a push 3 is the pro version of this, true. But at the same time, the push 3 is really different from this. It's way bigger. It's way heavier. Like it's probably 4 times as heavy as this thing, and probably 3.5 times at least 3 times as big as this thing. Yeah, it does everything, but at the same time, for me, it's not super portable. So it's, I would love to see kind of the key functionality of an Ableton standalone device in this size. I love this size. I think they did an excellent job with the size of it. So yeah, that would be cool with the pro version. Can you adjust the end point of samples as well? Yes, start and end point. You can. Yeah, you can. So let's go into, I think there's a sample on this one. No, yeah. So, yeah, so you can see like this is the sample here, and this gives you sample start point here. And then if you, so you have to do shift and length. Yeah. So if you do shift and length, is it shift and length, or is it, there was a combination. Oh yeah. So, yeah, so shift, and so the decay, if you hold shift when you go to the decay one, that gives you length. So that's basically your end point of the sample. So yeah, Again, it's not a really good sample editor. So you can adjust start and end points, but you're not going to be like fine tuning and finding zero crossings and all that stuff. You just can't do that in here. It's not that detailed. Did I get a gig in Brussels? No, I didn't, unfortunately. So I have 2 gigs in Amsterdam for ADE, one on the 17th and one on the 20th. So if you're going to be in Amsterdam, come hang out. That would be cool. What's up, unknown artist? Good morning. You're just waking up. I'm just about to go to bed. Definitely looks fun. It is. I have to say, like, that's the, if I'm going to do a hot take, like all the other guys did the hot take on the thing where most of their hot takes were shitting on it, I will tell you, I think it's awesome. I'm having a blast with it. I think it's super fun. I think it's exactly what they said it's going to be. I think that there are a ton of things that it's not, but it's not supposed to be. You know, it's like, I'm kind of laughing about it. Like it's like when the Syntac came out and they said, well, it doesn't sample. I'm like, no, it's a synth. You know, a Moog 1 doesn't sample either. You know, a Sub 37 doesn't sample either because it's not a sampler, it's a synth. You know, it's like certain things do certain things. This is what it says it is, and it's a really super fun way to do exactly what they said it would do. But it's not the perfect unicorn all thing for everybody machine, which doesn't exist and probably never will. Do you think there's enough here for the non-Ableton user? I do. I mean, I have to say it's really fun. I think that you're missing out on a ton if you're not using Ableton. But I have yet to connect this to Ableton. And I've been playing around with this, you know, all evening and been having a wonderful time. And I have not connected it to Ableton at all. So there's plenty of things you can do. And if you wanted to, you can then record out of the output to something like an Octatrack or something else. So you don't even have to go through Ableton. So there's plenty of uses for this, tons of ways that you could do really fun stuff, and then ways that you can get it out of the machine as well. So yeah, you don't have to be an Ableton user. I would say though, using this with Ableton, you're going to get a ton more out of it, whether that's just loading up your project into Ableton and finishing it, or just using this as an Ableton controller. Like you can put it in controller mode and just use it to control Ableton and have it fit really nicely on your desk. That's another pretty cool little thing that it does. Thank you. You're welcome. A hobbyist for fun. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of fun for a hobbyist. Could be a Move Live. Yeah, there you go. That would be sweet. I would love that. Been looking for a sampler that can do the Octatrack Mega Break trick. No, it won't do that. You know what does that? The Octatrack. Which is exactly why I have an Octatrack sitting right there, right next to me, part of my live setup. It's funny, for my live shows in Amsterdam, I wanted to have something for longer samples, for time stretched things like atmospheres and a couple loops and things. And I was using the Digitac 2. I was getting really frustrated with the stretch algorithm. So then I started using the black box. I was getting really frustrated with the workflow. And I was like, why am I beating my head against the wall? I'm just gonna use the Octatrack because it does it better than anything. I plugged it in and it all worked perfectly. And I was just like, yeah, that's why I use the Octatrack. Absolutely the best one around there. Okay. Good morning. Does it have any equivalent of auto sample from an external device? I'm trying to figure out if Move is a good companion to a solo synth. Playing, yes. Recording elsewhere. I'm not 100% certain. Are you, when you say auto sample, do you mean like looping, like live looping? So recording in and then automatically play? Because no, it does not do that. Yeah, it's not. It's a sampler in the way of a proper sampler. So like you plug something in, you record a sample, you do something with it, and then you use that sample. So it's not really set up to be a looper. If it is a looper that you're looking for, it seems like that's what you mean. If a looper is what you're looking for, I would say look at the Roland has one, Boss has one. The Octatrack is good for looping, but I would look for something that's specific to that. This is not that. It doesn't do that. This is really, this is really for getting things started. So let's see. What do you feel is missing to finish a track, to finish or track entirely? A lot. I mean, this is not a DAW in a box. This is not as somebody who's been producing music for a long time, what you get out of this is a long way from a finished track. You don't have any kind of processing. You don't really have much control per track of kind of mixing things other than level mixing, volume. There's no EQ per track. There is, you only have certain effects that you can use per track. On the drum tracks, you don't have individual effects per sample slot. It's just per like the main overall track. There's no way to do any kind of arrangement. So like what you get out of this is miles away from a finished track, but it is a great hands-on inspirational way to get tracks started, and then get them into your DAW in a format that the DAW just recognizes and picks up and goes. So you don't have to like track in a bunch of stems and then go in and edit the audio. You can just like chuck it in and get started and keep going with it. Like if you're using let's say you're using a drift synth in here, and you just have like the limited parameters that you can adjust. As soon as you load that into Ableton, that project, everything you're doing loads with a full version of the drift synth. So then you have all of the parameters, so then you can really fine tune things, or you can change it out to a different synth and you just have the MIDI. So it's like, it's a great sketchpad to get things started, but it is definitely not it's definitely not a performance device at all. Not at all. And it's definitely not like a finished production device. I like mine, but the lack of pitch bend is terrible. Okay. Is there pan? Yes, there is pan. Thanks for all. I have to go. See you later, Toff. Have a good one. Good to see you. Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think you're talking about pitch bend like a pitch wheel. I mean, you can pitch sounds. You have the ability to pitch and tune sounds. You have glide, you have slide, but you don't have any kind of pitch bend. Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for coming by. Gained a subscriber. Thanks. Welcome. Glad to have you. Have a good night. Even inputting a MIDI keyboard pitch bend wise. Yeah. Simplifying. For me, it's hybrid between OPZ and OP1. Very simplified. Have finger drumming scales and playing in key. A sequencer sampler seems easy. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like the same. I really feel like it's kind of like an OPZ and OP1, but not. I mean, those things have things that they do more than this. They have connectivity that this doesn't have. They have more synths. They have things like that. I don't know. It's just different. I think it's. We always try to say like, is it this? Is it this? Or is it a this killer or a that killer? No, it's its own thing. It is a sketch pad for sketching out ideas to get them into Ableton. And that's it. That's really what it is. And as far as like the, entering in a keyboard, a MIDI keyboard with a pitch bend and stuff, again, that's not really what it's for. it is for sketching out ideas. So if you want to play things and record them in expressively, use a proper MIDI controller with Ableton. This is designed to be an on-the-go sketchpad. So you don't want to be like on the bus going to work with this and a MIDI controller and cables and a thing over here and a speaker and a whatever. That's not what it's for. This is designed to be like, pull it out, mess with it, sketch out some ideas, get something going, and then take it with you. And if you want to like plunk in something on a keyboard so that you can maybe flesh out some drums around it while it's on there, yeah, you can do that, great. But you're not soloing into this, you're not recording final tracks into this. Those would be recorded into Ableton and used. This is more for the sketch of the idea, not capturing the live performance, if that makes sense. So I think that's why it doesn't have a lot of those inputs. But yeah, it would be cool if it had it, but I also am not missing it. Any beat matching tools? Nope. Nope. Yep. So anyway, that's it. I think we'll probably call it there, but this has been the Ableton Move, which I'd say I got it a few hours ago, kind of learned it with you guys while we were here. This is not a sponsored thing. I didn't get this from Ableton. I bought this. I ordered it as soon as I could because I thought it was very cool. Wanted to give it a try, and I'm loving it. I think it's very, very cool for what it is. And I think that there's always going to be people that are going to wish it was something that it's not, or it should have this, because that would have fit my particular style. But you know what? In the end of the day, it's not going to be for everybody because it is a very specific piece of gear, which is a sketchpad that's designed to work by itself to sketch ideas that you can then move into Ableton. And then you can have Ableton work with all your keyboards, all of your MIDI controllers, all of your synths, all of your hardware, all of your VSTs, all of your whatever. Those weren't designed to be with this. It has a way, if you like to enter in things with a keyboard, that you can connect one, but it's not really designed to capture keyboard performances. That's not really what it's for. It's, there are things that are much better for that, and this is not that one. But yeah, I think it's got its, I think it has its place. I think they came out with something with a very specific space in the market. And I think that the way they implemented it, I'm very impressed by. I think they did a really, really good job with the implementation. Sure, it could have always done more. That would have been super cool. But I think that it already does way more than I would have expected it to do in this form factor for this type of machine at this price point. So I'm going to use it for what it is, and I'm excited for it. I think it's pretty cool. And yeah. So if you have other questions, feel free to pop them down in the comments. Happy to answer if I can. I'll try and grab a couple of these last questions before I get off, but if you have any other questions, feel free to pop them down there. Let's see. For me, that I'm not a very skilled keyboardist, it's a different hybrid. Yes, it's different than having a finger drumming, more friendly than the OPZ, OP1. Yeah, sure. I totally agree with you. Thank you for your time. I'm glad you joined us here today. Thanks for answering the questions. Of course, that's why I'm here. That's why I do these things, because I was curious, so I figured other people would be curious. So that's why I did a stream, to help us work through it together and see if we're all curious what we can learn out of it. Thank you from Sydney. Nice. How's things in Sydney? I haven't been to Sydney in years. I used to live in Australia. Let's see, can you pan a track and see if the speakers are stereo? To be honest, I just heard that there were two speakers. I couldn't even tell there were two speakers. So I would be surprised if you could tell if they were stereo. I will just tell you flat out, the speakers in this thing are awful. Like I would never use the speakers in here for anything at all because you can't even hear the full spectrum of sound of the sounds that it's putting out. It sounds like a broken out, a blown out speaker inside a phone inside a tin can. The speaker sounds awful. So I wouldn't use the speaker for anything, much less seeing if it's stereo. Just tough at 500 when the app is 9. Yeah, but the app is a digital download and this is a piece of hardware. That's what you're paying for. For the record, I do also have a Push 3 standalone and I do like my Move, got it yesterday. But yeah, it could have been better implemented. Yeah, I mean, it could have been better implemented MIDI-wise, but I also don't think that was the point. As I mentioned earlier in the stream, I don't think they were trying to make a MIDI device. They were trying to make a sketchpad that integrated with Ableton, not a MIDI device that integrated with a hardware live setup or other devices or other DAWs or whatever. They wanted an Ableton sketchpad, and that's what they came up with. So, killer value for the price. I agree. I think it's a great deal. Yes, the pan controls are, where are they? Let's see here. I know I saw them before. But I don't know where I saw them. I don't know. I can't find where the pans are. But I know I did see pan before, so maybe it was an individual sound. But there are pan controls somewhere. Thank you for your time. Decent acoustic instrument samples. I don't know if they're samples. There's a couple of things that sound all right. A couple of the pianos and guitar things sound okay. And then there's some acoustic drum kits, which I know are samples, and those sound pretty good as well. But again, you can load in, there's like over 50 gigs of space to load in your own samples, so that's pretty cool. Feel like it's missing anything in terms of instrument or effects? Yeah, I mean, there's always more you could add. But like I said before, I don't think this is supposed to be a fully functional groove box. I would love to have performance effects. Oh. Sorry, I just lost my headphones because my battery died. But I will just plug them in. That's the beauty of these headphones, is that they can be battery powered or they can be cabled. So there you go. So now the cable is in. Yeah, so let's see here. There we go. Natural sounds, not synths. Yeah, there are quite a few natural sounds in there. Samples that sound pretty good. But again, you can load your own in, so it's pretty awesome. Should integrate with a launch pad for clip launching? Yeah, I guess. But I mean, I guess it kind of is a launch pad for clip launching. So yeah, and it probably, well, I don't know if it would over USB, but yeah, it's, again, it's not made for those things. It's made to be all by itself. It's not made to integrate with other stuff. Let's see. Reference my music with cell phone quality speakers because that's how kids these days consume media. Even iPhones have stereo imaging. Yeah, I mean, this is way worse than an iPhone speaker. And I think very few kids these days consume media through the speaker on their iPhone. I think they consume media from their iPhone, but through their $600 headphones or their AirPods or whatever that's connected to their iPhone. Very rarely are they using the speaker on their iPhone to consume media. Let's see. Poly Aftertouch of Launchpad Pro is brilliant to play expressively with 64 pads. Yeah, so is the Push 3. I know you said you have a Push 3. So if you want expressive MPE 64 pads, just use the Push 3. That's what I would say. General verdict, you're late to the party. General verdict is, I love it. I think it's very cool. I think it's very limited, but I think that's fine. I don't want it to be something that it's not. I think it is exactly what it's supposed to be, and they did a fantastic job of implementing exactly what it's supposed to be. Mono samples. They're mono samples? I thought they were stereo samples, but anyway, either way, doesn't really matter to me. Because again, I'm not performing on this. I'm not going to put it onto a big system. I'm going to move things into my DAW, and then I can use stereo imaging, and I can use all sorts of things afterwards. Can you parameter lock filter electron style? A few things. Yeah, I didn't know you could, but I realized during watch the whole video, because there's a whole section where somebody suggested and I tried it out. So yes, you can. Not a lot of things, not everything, but there's quite a few things, including filter, that you can parameter lock. So I was pretty surprised. Switching back and forth between clip launch and play mode. I mean, it's okay. Again, I'm not performing with it. So those things don't really bother me at all, because I'm not, if I was going to perform with it, then it would be something different, but I'm not even thinking at all about performing with it. So it's, yeah, on the Push 3 clip launch screen. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, the Push 3 is made as a performance instrument. It is supposed to be done that way. It has connectivity to connect with other instruments. It has a screen that's made to be able to launch scenes and multiple clips at a time and do all that stuff. It's the machine for playing live. This machine is for sketching new ideas and entering them into the Push 3 or into Ableton in your computer to finish them and then play them live on the Push 3 or on your computer or in other gear. This is not made for that at all. Push 3 is too heavy to travel with. I agree. That's why I don't travel with it. Yes, Launchpad and Move is a great combo, except the Move is not a Push 3. So it won't do what the Push 3 does. It's like, I wish the Push 3 was this size. The Push 3 is not. In order to do all the stuff it does, it is 4 times as heavy and 4 times as big as this. And so it does all those things. This cannot do even a fraction of the things that the Push 3 can do. And it is not designed for live performance. So yes, it would be an amazing fantasy to have a live performance machine that was this size and this shape that did the things that the Push 3 did, but in this size and this shape. This is not that, and I don't think that exists. It may at some point, someday. Let's tell Ableton that that's what we want. I would love that too. But in the meantime, this is not that. So I did not expect this to be that when I took it out of the box. It did not disappoint me because it does more than what I thought it was going to do for what it's supposed to do. And because I'm trying to be realistic and have it not, I'm not trying to make it be something that it's not, because it just won't be. Yeah, the automation recording, and also the fact that you can use capture on automation on this, which you can't on the Push 3 or in Ableton, which I think is very, very cool. But yeah, definitely watch this back. Cool, you should, it's good. I know the Launchpad Pro Mark III with Poly Aftertouch is super light, and so is Move. Yeah, but So is my phone and a pencil, but neither of them are hardware synthesizer, sampler, live performers. So like, it's not just, yes, I wish there was a light version, but there's just not, you know? Yeah. So cool. Well, thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out. If you've got other questions, put them into the comments on the video. Like, subscribe, sign up for my course. It really helps me out a lot if you join in. There are a few spaces still left for the November session, which starts November 5th. Sign up now so you don't miss out on your spot. Go to circlelive.com/courses to get signed up for that. And when you go on there, if you click into the course, you can see the full outline of all of the sections. So you can see all the information about what the course is about and what it covers and all of that stuff. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. You'll, I think, learn a lot. It's great to get to know a bunch of other people. Everybody kind of learns from each other. So it's a lot of fun. So go ahead and sign up for that if you haven't. And I will catch you in the next video. Thank you guys very much, and hope you learned something. I know I did, so thanks for tuning in.